Voorhees,
Here.
Leahy, Gamba,
Here.
Davis,
Here.
Godus,
Here.
and Gross.
Here.
Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, there is one agenda change I want to announce for this evening. Agenda item 18, which is planning item 15-18, the Solstice Townhomes in Cardiff Glen, and ordinance number 1, series of 2019, is continued to the February 7th, 2019 regular meeting. So if you're here for that item, you have to wait till our next meeting. At this point, I'd like to ask council members to identify if they have any conflicts of interest with respect to any item on the agenda this evening. Jim, would you like to start with that?
Yes, sir. I do not have any conflicts of interest on any item on the agenda.
I do not either.
And nor do I.
Nor do I.
I have no conflicts.
I do have a conflict of interest tonight on item number 17 for the clear renewal of contract for the 2019 sustainability program, so I will recuse myself from that.
All right, thank you. And actually, there is one other agenda change. We are going to shift agenda item 21, which is a tax initiative consideration for the April 2019 election. That will be moved up to agenda item 14. At this point, I would ask anyone who would like to make any comments to the council on any item that is not on this evening's agenda. Please come up to the podium, give us your name and address, and try and limit your comments to 3 minutes. Dan?
Hello, I'm Dan Cacho. I'm the local game warden for Colorado Parks and Wildlife here in Glenwood Springs. I'd just like to update the council on mountain lion issues that we've been having in Glenwood Springs. We have trapped 2 lions one out of Juniper Court and then one out of the North Traver Trail Oasis Creek area. Unfortunately, we had to euthanize those lions just for human health and safety issues. We're currently still attempting to trap more lions out of the North Traver Trail area. They're still very active in the area. We have seen video documentation of at least 3 other lions still moving around that area. So just wanted to update you all on our efforts. I know the PD's getting a lot of calls and there's been a lot of concern over this, but we're definitely attempting to do something about it. So any questions?
Any questions for Dan? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate the update.
All right, is there anyone else who would like to speak to the council about an item not on this evening's agenda? All right, seeing none, I will close that and bring it back to council for any council comments. Go ahead, Rick.
I think we had a tremendous and robust public meeting last night talking about short-term rentals. It was, I think, really well facilitated. I think really respectful. People got to hear from people that they wouldn't normally rub elbows with or exchange views with, and I think it was very hopeful and I know very informative to the council. So if you took the chance last night to be there, I want to thank you for that, and onward we go.
Thanks, Rick. Any other council comments? Jonathan?
It's on the consent agenda this evening, but I just want to make a quick comment. On the consent agenda, we have a city manager review that we did a couple of weeks ago, and there's a pay raise and bonus on that. And I just want to express my interest in thanking you for the service and leadership you provided. You have brought on excellent staff in your time here. You've retained excellent staff. You have a great team. You've brought millions of dollars, almost literally tens of millions of dollars in grants to the community. And you're worth every penny of it. And I just want to express my appreciation for it. And I think the rest of council in your review has also expressed that as well. I want to say that publicly since we have a packed house.
Yeah, we're not willing to say that publicly. Right.
For goodness sakes.
Great job.
All right. Thanks, Jonathan. Any other council comments? All right, next item on the agenda is a proclamation for Hal Sundin. Hopefully you can all hear me. I'm gonna walk down in front of the podium for this. Proclamation of the City Council, Hal Sundin, in recognition of your selfless service to the citizens of Glenwood Springs, 1990 and still going strong. Whereas Hal Sundin co-founded in 1990 the 100 Club, a social club whose aim was to enhance the health, lives, and enjoyment of the citizens of Glenwood Springs. And whereas Hal willingly volunteered his extensive experience as a backcountry hiker and summiter of all of Colorado's 14ers, as well as his expertise as a master naturalist to the 100 Club members and to other citizens. And whereas Hal created a mileage-based incentive program to encourage 100 Club members to participate very actively in the club's hiking group and administered the incentive program with absolute diligence. And whereas Hal continues to provide encouragement and education to the citizens of Glenwood Springs. And whereas, because of Hal's leadership, hundreds of Glenwood Springs senior citizens have remained physically active and healthy, mentally vibrant, and active contributors to the health and well-being of the entire Glenwood Springs community. Now therefore be it proclaimed that I, Michael Gamba, Mayor of the City of Glenwood Springs, Colorado, on behalf of the entire council and residents we serve, recognize, congratulate, and thank Hal Sundin for his years of passion, hard work, and commitment to his fellow 100 Club members and to the citizens of the City of Glenwood Springs.
I had my 100 Club shirt on for obvious reasons, and I just wanted to thank everybody for coming, but also to just tell a little story. I'd only been here, a year or less than a year, and came out for a hike with all of you who are, now my friends and didn't know anybody. It was a little intimidating first day, and one of the first guys that come up was Hal Sundin with all these mileage things all over his hat, and but later that year, asked me up to his house, and we went through all the maps and all the hiking trails and this sort of thing. Really, really helpful. And some of you know I'm now a kind of volunteer forest ranger, and the impetus for that was you, sir. So thanks.
I want to express my gratitude for being able to live in this community, the finest place in the world, for the last 30 years. And I'll keep on doing it as long as I can. Who this community has drawn, that I've been able to become acquainted with. Thank you, Hal.
Can I add one thing to Hal, I would also like to add, and some of you may not know this, but I met Hal many years ago when we served on the Transportation Commission together. And Hal served on the city's Transportation Commission for more than 9 years. So thank you for that also. You've been a great servant.
Thank you. Let's just give it a minute or two.
Yeah.
For the room to...
I believe that the brew pub is awaiting some of our guests.
So most of the crowd, it looks like. Come out and hike with us. We're doing something else.
Yeah, yes. It's a good fun break.
It is.
You can just make all rush to go.
But I did get out this last about 4 miles on the back. And snow, really cool.
Oh, very nice. You know, I'm just...
I was worried. Well, I was excited. On the opposite, I think they're all going to be here supporting us.
Free time, yeah.
Yeah, you know, it takes discipline.
Yes.
All right, we'll move on to the consent agenda. The consent agenda this evening consists of the following. Item A, Resolution 2019-2, a resolution of the City of Glenwood Springs, Colorado, approving the intergovernmental agreement with the Garfield County Clerk and Recorder for the regular election on April 2nd, 2019. Item B, receipt of minutes of the January 3rd, 2019 regular meeting. Item C, Sustainable Strategies Proposal. Item D, Ordinance Number 2, Series of 2019, and Ordinance of the City Council of the City of Glenwood Springs, Colorado, rezoning property owned by Iron Mountain Hot Springs, LLC, known as 281 Centennial Street, Glenwood Springs, Colorado, from mixed-use M1 to resort RE zoning. This is the second reading. Item E, Resolution 2019-6, a resolution of the City of Glenwood Springs, Colorado, authorizing a bonus and approving amendment to employment agreement for the Glenwood Springs City Manager. And item F, second amended aerial tramway lease agreement between the City of Glenwood Springs, Colorado and Glenwood Tramway, LLC. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move.
I'll second.
I have a motion by Rick and a second by Shelley to approve the consent agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right, next item, as I said earlier, we're moving item 21, which is the tax initiative up. So this is the tax initiative consideration for the April 2019 election related to a street tax.
Just real quick, you know, obviously we had a work session this morning. I tried to do some drafting based on what I thought I heard. What you have in front of you are two different sets of a resolution and an ordinance. The A's go together and the B's go together. A would be a standalone 3/4 cent tax. B would be combining the current half-cent with the new half-cent. I did not hear any interest in actually asking a bonding or debt authorization question, so I did not include that. But maybe I should have. We never really got to that.
We ran out of time. Deborah was moving us along, putting our thoughts on.
Let's see how that goes. If we need to, I can figure out a way to get that done for you guys. Probably not tonight. I had one. I just didn't include it because we hadn't run numbers on. We had to talk about amounts, terms, things like that. We get things that need to be included in this question. But anyway, that's what you have in front of you right now. The A's and B's, 3/4 and a combined 1 cent total, and then the ordinances that would go with that. And I keep forgetting about the button to make me be on the record. So with that, I'll get out of the way, and you guys can ask me questions if you need me.
Matt, do you have a presentation?
I just have a very short slide, which I was trying to concisely come up with what was been discussed over the last 5 and/or 6 meetings with FAB, with Chamber, with everybody that's been going on, and basically what Carl just said. You know, we were looking at multiple options of potential street tax, which would be the 3/4 cent for the 20-year with or without bonding capacity. It sounds like Carl did not bring bonding capacity paperwork. Which is perfectly fine. I know this discussion is going to continue on. You know, with the current half-cent tax to expire in 2026, they would overlap for the next 7 years, with the assumption that maybe that half-cent tax would be instituted in 2027. The second option I heard out there was doing a half-cent tax for the 20-year sunset with or without bonding, which would coincide with the half-cent we currently have till 2026. And then the Chamber brought in the revoke the half-cent, the current tax, and institute a new 1 cent tax for 20-year sunset with or without bonding capacity. And then there's always the fourth option, which is a do-nothing option, and start planning for a 2020 voting cycle. I just kind of wanted to put it up on the screen so everybody kind of saw what the 3, we'll call it 4 options were for discussion points.
Thanks, Matt. Any questions for Matt? Or any questions for Carl regarding any of the ordinances?
Carl, what ordinance, just so I'm clear?
Resolution
Thanks.
7A is the resolution. Resolution 7A is the resolution that would include the ballot language for a 3/4 cent increase in a standalone new tax. And then ordinance 4A would include language enabling that, so those two go together.
4A and 7A go together?
4A and
Yeah.
7A go together.
I think-
A's together, B's together.
I think on your second, yeah,
If there is one.
yeah.
Two motions.
I think there is a typo on your second whereas. You have 0.005, so that's like
That should be.
half a cent. Well, no, that is.
Now that it is on 7A, it should say 0.
No, it is
That's
right.
right.
That's right.
That's half a.
That's
That's
right.
half a
That's
penny.
half a cent.
Yeah.
It's been a long day for all of us.
I know. Never mind. Okay.
Is there a, I didn't get a 4A.
Didn't you?
I've got a 7A, 4B, 7B. Just didn't- Okay, thank you. I'm good.
Jonathan stole it.
Thank you.
I did.
So on 4A, if you go to the last, I think it's on the second page, kind of gives you, restricting it to existing streets, alleys, associated utilities, and that section clarifies those uses in the code. The way the tax section of the code is laid out, each separate tax has what it is authorized to be used for listed out in the municipal code in 040.
Yeah. All right, any questions for Carl? I am going to open it up for public comment. All right, is there anyone in the public who would like to comment on this?
Catherine?
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to comment. My name is Catherine Trogger. I am a member of 625 Sunny Acres. I forget how this goes. 625 Sunny Acres Road in Glenwood, and appreciate the chance to comment to you. I am a member and the chair of the Financial Advisory Board, and I'm also a citizen of Glenwood. So I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about the facts. There are a few facts that I don't think are new to anyone. One is the fact that our streets are a disaster. I don't think that's news to anyone. It's also a fact that the city does not have the revenue currently to fix those streets, to completely replace and repair them, as well as the infrastructure underneath. The existing 0.5% street tax is scheduled to sunset in 2026, and it is designed for maintenance, not the complete rebuilding of streets. And the final fact is that no one likes taxes. So you have been asked to consider a number of different options, including the option to do nothing, as Matt mentioned. The FAB, Financial Advisory Board, has advised on, recommended on taking the question of a 0.75% sales tax to the voters this April. And we feel that this is critical for several reasons. Number one, this is one of, if not the top complaint, one of the top complaints that we have heard from citizens. Fix our streets. Glenwood has neglected their streets for many years by not adequately providing maintenance. For several areas, this need is critical. We can see the potholes and the sinkholes and the cracks in the pavement and the disintegrating pavement, but there are also major issues that underlie those streets with the infrastructure. All of these issues will just continue to get worse, and the costs will continue to increase if we do nothing. But the question is, why 0.75% as opposed to 0.5%? And Matt Langhorst, as he was just up here, has a plan that will see Glenwood streets fixed in a 10-year period based on a 0.75%. The difference between a 0.5% and 0.75% is negligible, but will make the difference in getting this done in a timely fashion. And just to give you an example, I'll give you two examples. On a $25 purchase, the difference between 0.75 and a 0.5 would be 6 cents. On a $1,000 purchase, the difference between 0.75 and a 0.5% would be $2.50. I don't think that is a significant difference. So the time is now. The decision is yours. Put a 0.75% sales tax to the vote of the people in Glenwood in April. They deserve a chance to tell you yes or no. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Catherine.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak on this item? Mr. Exelberg.
Good evening. My name is Ian Exelbert, and I'm the chair of the Glenwood Springs Chamber Resort Association. We had some great discussion today, and I just wanted to come back. We called a special meeting and got back together as a chamber board, and I just wanted to read a statement for you all as to try to provide a little bit more direction on our position. Ultimately, we represent the business community, and we feel that that's a voice that has not yet been heard. We'd like to ultimately have some more time to be able to understand what the business community thinks about this. But I did want to let you know that the the Glenwood Springs Chamber Resort Association Board expresses continued support for the need to give attention to the city's streets and infrastructure. In light of the short time frame, we'd like additional time to consider council's measured decision, which we will take under advisement promptly following tonight's meeting and prior to the ballot language being finalized, provided the language is reasonable and acceptable. We wanted to just be able to be here to provide some level of support for you all in the fact that the need, we absolutely believe that the need exists, and we commend you on all the work that you guys have done and appreciate the opportunity to share that statement and sentiment with you. Thank you.
Thanks, Ian.
Thanks, Ian.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak in regard to this item? right, seeing none, I will close it to public comment and bring it back to council for...
Mr. Mayor, if I could, just because Jonathan wanted it, I can give you a resolution with a bond question and some numbers filled in.
That'd be great.
We had a draft, we just didn't have numbers.
Thanks.
So what you're looking at is a bond or a debt authorization question based on an assumed no more than a 4% interest rate. This is based on the 3/4 cent, although the numbers would work at a half cent, obviously, because you'd have enough capacity. $16 million in principal, 21 in total repayment cost. It's based on a 10-year cycle, since these are streets, and Steve Boyd's recommendation is to keep it shorter than the lifespan of the road that you're borrowing for. So, hence that gives you that input if you wanted it.
Any questions for Carl regarding this resolution? So that would create there'd be two different ballot measures or ballot questions.
Two different questions. So underneath Tabor, you have to ask the question authorizing the tax as one question, and ask the question authorizing debt as a separate question. So this would result in two questions on the ballot. And obviously, the debt question, if it passes without a revenue stream, it's kind of meaningless. But
And how's that calculated? Where's this? The numbers you filled in?
The numbers are based on, well, Steve's probably better at describing it, but it's based on what we believe the capacity with 3/4 cent over 10 years, assuming a worst case scenario of a 4% interest rate. So that gets you about $16 million in principal that you could borrow, $21 million in repayment costs because it's a relatively short repayment period. And I'll let Steve fill in what that annual payment would look like.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. So if we borrow $15 million, we put 16 in to give us a little bit of room for closing costs or something, but $15 million bonded over 10 years is right at a $2 million payment. So $2 million times 10 years is $20 million bucks. Again, we put $21 million in just to make sure that we had enough capacity. We would need to have 2 times coverage cash flow wise to be able to qualify for that. So those numbers in front of you would be about as much as we could qualify for. That would be as much as we could bond based on an additional tax of 0.75%.
And the 3/4 cent you think would generate how much over 10 years?
It would generate about $3.8 million today, and then who knows what kind of growth rate we would see. You know, I mean, if it grows at 2% or so.
3.8 in the next 12 months, you're saying?
Correct. Yeah.
So why does the resolution go from 4.15 to 5? I see the little
spreadsheet. So here's the risk with a Tabor election. You have to estimate your first year total revenue. If you are below what your actual first year revenue is, then you have to refund that additional revenue, and it also constrains you moving forward as to the amount. So what you're seeing is a little bit of a comfort zone, and then Yvette and Steve and I having another conversation about what's the absolute worst case or best case scenario. We don't believe it could go over 4.5, and it's just really, you know, you remember what happened with the fire tax in 2000.
Yes.
And I don't want to have that be the end of my career.
And mine.
Good point.
So in the first year, Carl, would be the first from June to July? Or is it a fiscal year?
I think it would be calculated on the first fiscal, isn't it? Or the first year.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on, I thought it would be from July 1st
yeah, it would probably
to
be
June
July
30th.
1st to June.
Yeah, if we pass it in April.
If we pass it in April, right. I'm sorry, I was thinking of a November election.
Yeah,
Usually I always start in the first of the year. So it would be that first year, we're, you know, at what we think we're going to do this year, it's about 3.8. Figure a 5% growth, which is how we got to 4.15. Figure that the economy is just gangbusters for some reason. That's why the additional cushion. I don't know that the difference between 4.15 and 4.5 in the question is going to change anybody's mind. And it certainly makes, I think, Yvette and Steve and I feel more comfortable
And the tax starts, I just want to be clear, it starts January 1, 2020?
No, it would start July 1, 2019.
Okay, because the resolution,
Does it say 2019?
it says January 1.
Yeah.
I mean, July makes sense to me. I just wanted to.
No, that's Tom Peltz and I trying to get these cranked out. Sorry about that. So that's a change we should make.
Okay.
Let me find the right resolution.
Steve, can I ask you a question? If the voters would, pass one of these taxes, half-cent, three-quarters, whatever, can the projects that are anticipated over this 10-year period, which is sort of the complete repair and restoration of our city streets, can that be completed in an orderly fashion or what have you without bonding? In other words, I'm trying to get clear in my mind whether bonding is necessary to occur along with this tax, or whether we would, in fact, without bonding for it, be able to complete the project within the 10-year period.
It would stretch the timeline out a little bit. I don't know exactly how much. We could get pretty close to that, I think. You know, if we bonded for $10 or $15 million, that would get us a head start in the first couple of years. And if we can get through the first few years a little sooner, we would basically be saving the last couple of years. And when you factor in a cost of inflation for construction of, say 3% overall inflation, it becomes a big deal 15 years down the road. But the answer to your question, Jim, is yes. I mean, we could do it. I'd have to defer to Matt on the timing. We'd have to kind of think that through, but we could do it without bonding if we needed to.
Okay, thank you.
And could I ask Matt a question too? We've been in, I don't know how many hours now of work sessions, or how many work sessions we've been in talking about the streets and the priorities, and this total project, at your calculation at the last priority meeting that we had, I thought came out at like $56 million. Is that
56,
correct?
yes. And that just puts us through 2030. So once again, this tax will continue on, and we will continue to fix streets at that point, but then we'll start on a new set of streets that were done, in the 90s and early 2000s. We'll just continue the process through.
So you would use the 3/4 cent in addition to the existing half-cent.
Correct.
Which is going to generate in 10 years, I'm not real good at math, but it looks like $63 million.
In 10 years, what we're projecting right now, and actually we're projecting through 2019 through 2030, so it's actually an 11-year process. It's about $55 million that I had in there.
Okay.
And that was with no growth on the taxes, as we talked about in those work sessions, and it was with a 5% growth within the cost of construction. So we're trying to be as conservative as possible. Taxes will probably go up 2 or 3% every year as long as the economy's good, so we'll have more money than I'm currently budgeting for. Mm-hmm. If we need to have water and sewer pay for some things, if we need A&I to help pay for some things, we could potentially make up for some of those deficits, because you will see that I didn't just say, this year we only have $4.75 million, we're only going to do $4.75 million worth of work, because in some cases it made sense to continue and finish a subdivision. So we were actually in the negative on some of these years. So we'll have to find either money from different funds to accommodate for that, or we would have to bond for it, which is why the language was being put in there, in case it's not available from other sources.
Okay.
Will we ever use it? I mean, I would hope not to, but we wanted to have the possibility out there depending for all eventualities. I guess.
And based on our conversations, I guess, we're believing 73% of this project is actually paid for by people who do not live in Glenwood Springs, which is about $40 million of it leaves the citizens of Glenwood out of about $16 million for these projects.
I've heard that statistic before, yeah.
All right.
So Matt, and I guess, we've discussed this sort of ad nauseum, but just for the benefit of folks in our audience and our viewing public at home, can you talk a little bit about the schedule that you put together, and maybe just a little bit about the process that went into doing this, which is sort of a watershed event, I guess, in terms of our recent history with streets?
Sure. So if you actually look at the list that I have, it starts at the beginning of 2018. So we did a lot of road work over 2018. We did a lot of chip and seals, we did some mills and overlays, we did crack seals, we did maintenance, and we did some upgrades. If you look at the list of streets from 2018 all the way through 2030, virtually every street in the city is on that list. So 2018 is done. We'll kind of back away from those roadways for a little bit. You know, we'll come back and do maintenance on them when they get back into the list. But from 2019, we don't have this money yet, so we're doing what we are with our $1.45 million. In 2020, you know, if the tax is available to us and we do get it passed, that's when some of the major reconstructions start. You know, the Cedar Crest subdivisions, the North and South Red Mountains, the Glen Parks, you know, they start coming into the fold of that roadway list. The list was compiled through different methodologies. One, what is the level of street disrepair at this point? Two, what are the ADTs? Three, what are the water and sewer line needs underneath of those roadways? So the Water and Sewer Department put together quite an extensive list themselves, which is part of this cost, of saying we have high priority, medium priority, and low priority system improvements that we need to make over the next decade or so. So they played a part into, you know, some of these roadways. Like Cedar Crest is not a high ADT system out there. I mean, there's not a whole lot of people that use that, but the roads are terrible. The infrastructure underneath of the roads are terrible. The drainage that goes within that facility is really pretty poor at this point and doesn't actually have any direction. It just kind of exists. So it got kicked up the list. You know, ADT is not the only thing you can look at. Yes, we'll hit Blake Avenue, we'll hit Midland Avenue. South Midland is already a capital project. 27th Street Bridge is already a capital project. We need to do some more investigations on our water line between 27th and 8th Street on Midland and make sure that when we move forward with that construction that we've done the right thing for the water line. So we've kind of kicked that one off a few years, even though it's in high ADT. There's still information that needs to be gathered and designs need to be put together. So, you know, this year we already have budgeted, you know, North Red Mountains already will be completed, design this year. Cedar Crest will be completed as a design this year. The intentions is to put an RFP out for South Red Mountain from 13th Street over to 10th. From Midland, we'll call it up to Walls, so that we are ready to move forward with projects as money becomes available. Because that's kind of the kicker is, if we don't start on designs, how do we put things out to bid? How do we make sure the designs are correct when we're going to put back in? Because we can't just remove and replace in a lot of cases. We have to remove and upgrade. Mm-hmm. So it's been quite extensive.
Do you have the 8th Street extension included anywhere in your schedule in terms of our recognition that it's, as constructed, it was constructed as a temporary roadway. It's going to need, you know, a reconstruction probably sooner rather than later, and I'm curious if that's in your schedule.
So 8th Street extension is not part of the schedule currently. There are 2 water projects, 1 sewer project, and 8th Street extension that are not currently part of the schedule. And the 2 water projects and the sewer project are because they are massive projects themselves. They would actually eat up the entire tax for the entire year. So we have to come back and find a different way to fund those. Whether it's grants or capital or whatever that's going to be, we need to find a different way.
Okay.
Can I ask a question? I'm not sure if it's for you, Matt, it might be for Steve, or it might be for Carl, but a couple of our meetings ago we were discussing a sunset, and we discussed a concept that said, you know, the tax would sunset the earlier of the time the project was complete or some set date. And I don't know that.
Yeah, can I address? I can address that. So
Okay.
if you look in the ordinance labeled 4A, and you go to what is section 5 of that, it was actually something I was going to bring up when we got to a motion on it. In that, the way I've worded that for now, if you'll take a look at that at the bottom of the page, City Council hereby levies a 3/4 cent sales and use tax, which shall expire at midnight December 31st, 2039, or upon completion of the 2019 street and alley reconstruction plan adopted via resolution 2019-whatever, assuming that we would adopt that plan sometime between first and second read, or maybe on second reading of this ordinance. I could tweak that a little bit, but that was the input that I got.
Provision.
Yeah.
So if a citizen were to say, hey, we're talking about a 10-year plan and a 20-year tax, it's really not 20 if we finish earlier.
Right, and it became unduly complicated in the question, so we placed it here as.
Got it. Okay, thanks.
So procedurally, it's my understanding if we are going to have anything on the ballot in April of 2019, we have to have that language approved by January 28th or 29th.
Yeah, 28th would be, I think, the most comfortable for Catherine and myself.
But that is not the ordinance.
No, it wouldn't have to be. I like to usually run them together because it's the ordinance. If it's more specific, it gives you something to work off of when we start talking about that potential as an information piece.
Right, but in order for us to pass the ordinance on second reading, we'd have to have a special meeting.
Right, no, you're fine passing it on second reading on the February 7th meeting. The ordinance, I get what you're saying now. The ordinance isn't critical before that date. That's why we did the language via resolution.
So if, this again, I guess for you, Carl, if we were to select one of these, let's say ordinance 7A, resolution 7A, I mean, we'd be voting on really three things, I guess, tonight, right? The resolution 7A, the ordinance 4A, and the resolution 8. Those would be three different motions, I guess, that one of us would be making.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, and so you can use any of them or none of them. Like I said, that's why I had so many different iterations out for you.
Okay.
At this point, I would entertain a motion if anybody cared to do it. Sorry, Shelley, you're.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I had a question for you. I guess for Matt, maybe for Steve. We've had a lot of discussion about this. We had a big work session today and, debating about, is it smarter to go with the half-cent tax addition to the half-cent that we already have, or to go for the three-quarter? The three-quarter certainly gives us more cushion, I guess, and confidence in knowing that we can meet those numbers and get the streets rebuilt in the timeline that we need. My personal feeling is that we could do it with the half-cent tax, and I like the Chamber's proposal to do kind of a repeal and replace. I do have some concerns that if we pass the three-quarter cent, we've still got to go for a renewal of the half-cent, the existing half-cent tax in 2026, and that could possibly threaten that. What risks would that put to this project if that was not renewed in 2026 for some reason?
Well, obviously that would take away approximately $1.5 million per year for at least the last 4 years of the 10-year plan at this point. So it'd be 27, 28, 29, and 30. Those last 4 years, we would be missing approximately $1.5 million of the budget that I currently have proposed.
2.5?
Well, it's 2.5, but you know that there's things that come out of that 2.5
right.
off the top. So I'm only budgeting 1.5 of that right now.
Okay, all right.
So we would be missing approximately $6 million out of the budget at the end of the day.
Okay, so it might delay things, but it would keep going.
It could delay things, but the three-quarter we would continue on with what we could. Obviously, the list would change at that point, and there would be an extension to the projects.
Okay. And if we were to build in this clause in the ordinance where it would expire when kind of the main spreadsheet of projects is done, do you feel like we can keep going with maintenance then with the half-cent that we have now, or, are we?
So
it's hard to predict that far.
It is really hard to predict that, depending on what the half-cent income is at that point, what cost of construction is at that point. I think we're going to have a really good idea about where the half-cent sits in 2025. How are we doing? How much money is that bringing in? Mm-hmm. Maybe that needs to go back out as a half-cent again in 2026, 2027. Maybe it needs to be a three-quarter. Maybe it gets extended for a shorter period of time or something. Like we're going to have to make those decisions kind of at that point. Right. When we hit it.
Right.
So not knowing, the crystal ball and we all look into it and say this is what's going to happen, we're going to have to just kind of decide.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Thanks, Matt.
All right, Jonathan?
If it's appropriate, I'd like to move to approve Ordinance 4A, an ordinance of the City of Glenwood Springs calling an election on April 2nd, 2019.
I'm sorry, I screwed that up for you. Should have been the resolution first. I had my numbers split.
Yeah.
So resolution 7A.
That's okay. I would like to amend my motion to approve Resolution 7A, a resolution of the City of Glenwood Springs setting the title and content of a ballot issue for a tax increase to be submitted at the election to be held on April 2nd, 2019. Do I need to specify anything else in this motion?
No, the only couple of things I'd say is I just had to make a couple of notes that the tax would commence on July 1st, 2019 in that ballot language, and then there's a related typo on Section 3.
I would like to amend the motion for those suggested changes as well as the 4.5 million annual number as well.
I'd second that motion.
Motion by Jonathan and a second by Jim to approve resolution number 7A with the amendments as discussed, or revisions as discussed. Any further discussion? Rick?
No, my discussion would have been before the motion was made.
Okay. Shelley?
Yeah, I'd just like to say, you know, this isn't my number one preference, but at the same time, ultimately, it's a good plan that staff has put together. It's a solid plan to get our streets fixed. And when the three of us newer council members were elected, we heard about that a lot. Our streets are in bad repair in certain parts of the city. They're old. A lot of them were adopted in from the county and older subdivisions that really haven't been touched in 40 years. And we don't have the money to fix them properly right now. So it makes sense for me to go forward with this, and ultimately the voters are going to make the decision. So I'm going to support putting this to the voters, and hopefully they will give us the support we need to do it. So
I'll go ahead and make a comment as well. We had a very lengthy discussion this morning, and there was obviously many different perspectives on this offered during that discussion. I've always taken the position up here that I try to know what I know what I don't know, and know the difference. And I know that I don't know campaigning, and that's not my area of expertise. And I'm not going to go, for example, to the Transportation Commission to get advice on how to run a campaign. I'm not going to go to the Financial Advisory Board on how to solve a transportation problem. The group that has always, for the last 30 years, conducted campaigns on behalf of the city with respect to tax issues is the Community on the Move. We heard fairly clearly from them that they have they see it as a very significant challenge to getting this tax approved in April. We can believe them, we cannot believe them. That's our prerogative up here. I think it's unwise of us to try to pursue this without them. I don't believe that this is just a slam dunk. We put it on the ballot and it's going to get passed. My preferred option would have been a compromise where we did a 1 cent combined tax to replace the existing half-cent sales tax, and that we pursue that this April. That compromise didn't garner support, and this is the direction the council wants to go. In the interest of being unanimous up here, so that we don't give people an argument to not support it, I will vote for this measure, but I'm just saying that I think it's ill-advised that we pursue this without the support and active support of Community on the Move. Let's just call the question.
That's not how that works.
Not how that works?
Is it on the screen?
There'll be more opportunity to discuss.
I'm not.
Yes.
We have two more issues. I don't have anything to vote on here.
Oh, I think you got to hit go go back to the computer.
Oh, whoops.
Oh,
You're on the
there you
presentation.
go. Now you gotta get on the computer screen. There you go.
All right. Any further motions anyone would like to make? Jonathan, your button is flashing.
Not a motion, but, oh.
Do we want to call the vote?
Oh, whoops, sorry.
I forgot to save my vote.
I got to wait for us to actually count the votes before I move on, sorry.
Okay, Cope yes, Voorhees yes, Gamba yes, Davis yes, Goldish yes, Ingraham yes, motion passes.
All right, Jonathan.
I would like to motion to approve ordinance 4A, an ordinance of the City of Glenwood Springs calling an election on April 2nd, 2019 for voter approval to increase the street maintenance and construction sales and use, providing the effective date of this ordinance and setting forth details in relation thereto.
Second.
We have a motion by Jonathan and a second by Jim to approve ordinance number 4A.
Can I ask a question on that? Are you including section 5 for the early sunset?
Yeah, I was going to say you guys may want to have. You may want to have a little bit of discussion if that's the language you want, because we haven't had an opportunity to discuss that in a work session yet. The specific.
For purpose of the motion, so we can have conversation, I will, yes, include it.
Okay.
But I'd like to have conversation and I'd be open for any friendly amendments to that.
All right, any further discussion on this item?
Carl, what does it say? I mean, just kind of boil it down. You do a great job.
I think, I'll let Carl answer, but I think
Translate
the way I was interpreting it is to say, you know, if we finish the project sooner than 20 years, the tax will sunset prior to that.
It makes an assumption that you guys are going to adopt sometime probably between now and February 7th. Probably at the February 7th meeting, you're going to adopt this particular street plan, which I think is important to have that adoption occur formally moving towards an election. It just would reference back to the resolution by which you did that and say when that plan is complete, you guys would repeal the tax. And you can always repeal a tax via council action.
And
so
I think,
that's what it says.
I think, Jonathan, and at least my view is, for me, in terms of wanting to go out and speak to the folks in the community, that's important because we have a 10-year plan and a 20-year tax, and it raises an obvious question. So I think to be able to say, you know, we've selected 20 years, so there's some flexibility, but there's a safeguard in there. If we finish in 10 years, we're not going to keep collecting for an extra 10. So I think, you know, at least that's my view, to feel like I could go out and honestly look, you know, the taxpayers in the eye and say this is what this money's for. Having that in there, I think, is important myself.
So I guess my question is then, if we do the bonding, and maybe you already explained this, but if we do the bonding to finish the plan in 10 years, but we still have 5 years left or more to pay off the bonding, how would that work?
So a couple of things. One is you wouldn't be able to repeal until it was complete, until those bonds were paid. We've specifically, the numbers we looked at and that Steve is recommending relate to a 10-year borrowing, anticipating that would probably occur in the first year of the tax. So they would sync up relatively close, honestly. There again, the reason for that 10 years is that you want to borrow money for less than the useful life of the thing that you're borrowing money to build. So.
Right. So I prefer to have that in, similar to Jim's comments. I think it gives us a stronger story to the voters.
Jim?
I piped in out of turn, so I'm done.
Oh, okay. Did you want to say something?
No.
Okay.
Did you?
No, I'm good.
So I believe my motion did include that, correct?
It did.
Okay.
Yep. All right, if there's no further comments, let's go ahead and call the question.
There you go.
I scared it.
Cobb, yes. Voorhees, yes. Gamba, yes. Davis, yes. Goldish, yes. Ingraham, yes. Motion passes.
Jonathan?
I move we approve resolution number 8, a resolution of the City of Glenwood Springs setting the title and content of a ballot issue authorizing debt with such ballot issues to be submitted at the election to be held on April 2nd, 2019.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Jonathan and a second by Rick to approve ordinance, or is it ordinance? I'm not sure. Resolution number 8.
8.
Any further discussion on this?
I know we haven't had a lot of discussion on this. And I think originally I was apprehensive about putting ballot language on there and having 2 questions, particularly if a bonding language had to encompass the entirety of the tax and be something scary with borrowing costs of like 80, 90 million. But to have it come back and see 16 to 21 million is not near as frightening to me as a voter with my voter eyes on. So if it gives us more flexibility to fulfill the promises that we're making to the citizens and allows us to potentially weather and continue to do construction projects even when we might have declining sales tax because of a recession, I think that kind of flexibility is a win for the citizens, for our local economy, as well as the promise we make to the voters.
Thanks, Jonathan. Jim?
Yeah, I guess I've, like you've been less enthusiastic about the concept of bonding for a variety of reasons, and I won't get into it. But I think, as I listen to Matt, you talk about some of these are fairly significant projects, and you'd like to get going on them. If this gives us the ability to kind of smooth out, some years we're going to have more expensive projects, other years less. If this gives us the ability to keep moving, then and for that reason I'll vote for it. I did just want to be sure that we're not sort of creating an impression that says we'll borrow all this money and in year 1 get out there and do it. Because number one, I don't think you have the capacity to do it, and I don't think our citizens have the capacity to absorb that level of work all at once. So I just want to be clear that, we're not going to say, we're going to jump out and do $10 million worth of work in 1 year and tear up, half the streets in the city. So with that in mind, I will be voting for this. Since this is probably my last time to comment, I want to come back to one thing that Mike said and one thing that Ian said. And the thing that Mike, I don't discount your concerns. I want to be clear about that. I guess I would say I would agree with Catherine Trauger's comments. The citizens have told us for a long time this is something they want. All the parties involved, everybody up here, the chamber, Community on the Move, everyone has said we agree on all the major issues. The streets need to be fixed. This is really the only way we've found to accomplish that. That's worthwhile putting to the voters. I don't mean to discount the risk, but that, I just want to share that point of view. And Ian, I just wanted to tell you I appreciate your coming tonight and expressing your openness and support for what council is. When you spoke, is what we might decide now. I think it's clear what we are deciding, and I appreciate that. That's all I have, Mike.
Thanks. Jonathan?
Yeah, I guess maybe I'm just echoing your comments, Jim, but I'm going to be very interested to hear back from you guys. We will have a special session because we have to before January 29th.
No, you're done tonight.
Oh, I'll be very interested to hear back from you. And thank you for all your support, for all your group support, for all the years that you guys have supported all of our different, all of the communities, not ours. It's all of our communities' efforts. And I just hope that we continue to get the full-throated support of Community on the Move and the Chamber. And ultimately, we know we have your support to fix the streets. It's just a question of timing. And, it's a question of if the voters want it, then this is what they'll vote for. So I have a lot of faith in the voters. I have a lot of faith in the people of this town that they'll make the right decision. And the right decision might very well be that we don't do this. We're just doing what we can right now to give them the option. So voters, it's up to you.
Thanks, Jonathan. Rick?
Yeah, this is a real watershed event. Yeah, we have kicked the can down the road, the proverbial road, and sometimes it's gone into a pothole and then it's got into a rut and then the can got ran over a few times. So, no, I really do appreciate the enormity of the moment here. It is a big thing. It's also sort of a bargain for residents of Glenwood. Any time that 3/4 of your revenue is not paid by sales tax from people who reside outside of our city, I think that really helps a lot. Some municipalities go to a street assessment, and people wind up with a large, maybe unanticipated or anticipated, depending on how nimble their councils are, bill to fix a street in front of their house, and this isn't that. It is sort of an identified revenue source, I think, that's largely paid for by a strong tourist economy. And people in the neighborhoods appreciate the fact that, we're spreading and a little bit of this revenue across town, and we're taking care of some long-standing sorts of problems. So I really appreciate the opportunity to work with Community on the Move, with the Chamber, and I'm looking forward to getting my first assignment fairly soon. So, thank you.
Thanks, Rick. Shelley?
Carl, just to verify again, so the bonding question only is relevant if the tax passes, correct? Yeah. Otherwise, it's just a moot point. And I'm going to support the bonding just because it does give us flexibility to do the timing and have the money when we need it if we need to front load these projects. I agree with you guys. I'm really hopeful that this will pass and that we can address the issues with our streets in town. And I hope for the voters' support. So I'm ready to call the question.
All right, I'll call the question after I make a couple comments. I am not going to support this. I believe that we are already have a huge uphill battle in front of us to get this passed by the voters, and it doesn't matter how much we want it. It doesn't even matter how much we need it. If we don't get 50% plus one vote to pass this tax, we don't have the money. And my position has never been anti-roads. I've been arguing for road construction and improvements and regularly scheduled maintenance for the 7 years and 9 months I've been on council. And I do believe we need to increase the tax. I also do believe that adding a bonding question further erodes the support for the original tax. So for that reason, I will not support this. Let's go ahead and call the question.
Cope, yes. Voorhees, yes. Gamba, no. Davis, yes. Goldish, yes. Ingraham, yes. Motion passes.
All right. Moving on, you find my agenda.
Thank you for moving me up on the agenda. I appreciate it.
What is my agenda?
Here's one.
There it is. All right, next item is agenda item 14, approval of a proposed paint scheme for the new Ride Glenwood buses.
Good evening, Council. I am substituting for Tanya, so please bear with me. We are in the process of having our new our new buses made. And we have to decide on a background concept, or at least a background color, if not the logo of the buses. And Tanya has put together this exhibit that shows kind of the various choices for the background color. The first one is that white with the kind of the brownish stripe and incorporates our Wavy G logo. The second is this this blue with yellow. It's a little bit more bright. And then the third choice is this addition of the mountains in the background. From a staff standpoint, Tanya has recommended that we go with the number one, at least base paint color, because it's easier to alter in the future if we needed to. But we would like to hear what you prefer.
Questions for Terry?
Are they all at the same cost?
Yes. No difference in the pricing.
I think my computer's locked up, so I'm
number one.
unable.
Can you, right behind you is the, okay, you'd have to turn around to look at it, but that's the...
Terry, you're recommending what you're calling option one.
Option one, which is on the screen right now. It's kind of the basic white, and it just, again, easier to alter in the future if we wanted to change. But the most important part of this discussion is just the base paint color. You know, logos, the Wavy G or adding mountains could be added in the future if we wanted to change. But if the council likes this design, we could just go ahead and authorize this at this time. Or again, you know, any one of these three are design options that we can give direction.
Should I open this up for public comment?
No.
Anyone from the public who would like to comment on this item? All right, seeing none, I'll close it to public comment and bring it back to council for discussion and or motion.
I'll move that we direct staff to implement what has been described to us as option number one.
Here.
Wait a second.
That's a second.
Okay.
Here.
We have a motion. We have a motion by Jim and a second by Steve to approve option number one for the paint scheme for the new Ride Glenwood buses. Any further discussion? Shelley?
At the risk of sounding a little bit negative here, and I don't want to come across as negative, but you know, the current bus design we had was very personalized to Glenwood Springs, and we had photos that were kind of showed the area, and these seem very generic, and especially the third option, you know, it's kind of got generic mountains on it as opposed to the canyon and river country that identifies us more. So I'm not real thrilled about any of these. If they're kind of a basic low-cost option, I can go along with them, but I don't feel like they really identify us as our transit system, but how many of these are we going to have?
I believe we've got 2. They're grant funded mostly.
Okay.
Yeah, so, and you know, you guys probably remember that we revised the transit operating plan, and we're thinking about, you know, alternative solutions other than 30-foot buses. So it could be that, you know, we only have these in our stock for a few years before we decide that we're going to sell them and buy something else that fits our transit operating plan better.
Okay. Okay.
And I think the other thing to note is that Tanya said really all we need to know tonight is just the base paint color. She said graphics could be discussed further.
Okay.
It's just a matter of, you know, where they are in their manufacturing process. So the idea of, you know, coming back and saying, hey, we want to add, you know, better pictures of the area, you know, may still be an option.
Or some design that captures us more.
Yeah.
So the base, in the first design, the base color is just white?
Yeah, it's just white.
And then that stripe on the bottom, or?
Yeah, I believe that would be part of the base color too. The logo, the YVG and the Glenwood Springs, I think could be part of something, you know, could be something else.
Yeah. Okay, that sounds fine.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right, Jonathan?
I should not be commenting on this at all.
Then don't.
Then don't. I have such a poor eye for this, but that's never stopped me before. Much like Mayor Gamba commenting about art in public spaces. I think option 1 looks like an upside down ambulance. Option 3, while it's maybe not reflective of our exact area, it's at least reflective of a mountain community and has a little bit of flavor to it. But if we can add some graphics, great. I just think option 1 seems about, I don't know if I could design a more bland bus.
Do we have to make this decision today?
I do think it's, you know, that's just where they are in the fabrication, and unfortunately we weren't aware of kind of the emergency around picking the color, but the color is the one thing that we do need to make a decision.
Because they have to paint the bus, basically.
Yeah, they're at that point in the fabrication process.
So we don't have time to put out a poll or hire a consultant? Or
no, not for another 50,000.
We can probably wrap this if we go to the first option and we don't like it. We can probably put a nice vehicle wrap around it for not too much money if that's what we really want to do.
I think that was the comment that was made, was it's easy to change at that point.
Yeah, I think that was kind of Tanya's direction, is that it's base white.
At this point,
I do too. You're right. Our staff, it needs to deserve that respect.
You know.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, any further questions? So we have a motion. I don't even remember who made it. Jim and Steve seconded it with it here to approve paint scheme option 1. Any further discussion? Let's call the question.
Good abstain.
I was thinking, actually.
You don't get many options to do that. I don't know. I've got a black screen.
Go back and forth, maybe.
There it is. Sorry.
Cope yes, Voorhees no, Gamba yes, Davis yes, Godish yes, Ingraham yes. Motion passes.
Okay, thank you. And so we will come back to you with additional graphics to put on top of the white buses.
Darn you guys.
Thanks, Terry.
Yep, thank you.
All right, next item is Traverse Park bid results and consideration of award.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. True River Shoreline Project has been a project on several generations of council's to-do list agenda, and this council, probably more than any other, has gotten traction on it and pushed it forward. You know, the main purpose of the project is to remove a lot of the debris along the shoreline, especially safety aspects of it, including existing pillars that are within the
the river and other obstructions, make major improvements to the usability of the shoreline and the boat ramp, improving capacity there, and beautify and increase recreational amenity and use of the riverfront, including protected beach-like areas, and improve the aesthetics along the riverfront with some river trails. Some of the main aspects of the project, going from upstream to downstream by the pedestrian bridge into Two Rivers Park, is a river trail right along the river line with stone terracing and vegetation and amphitheater-like area for different activities. If we go forward with some kind of a water feature in the future, this area acts as a natural takeout as well as viewing area for those types of activities. I mentioned protected beach-like areas and improved river access and staging for taking out of the river, boat ramp area, as well as accessible restrooms and pavilions for picnicking for those that are waiting to go in or have just taken out as a group. A improved and dredged water channel around the island area that provides a protected play area for families and kids to utilize there, away from the flow of the main river body, as well as designed to access that island along with some trail and educational signage and engagement. One of the things that did come out of the public charrette was a need for accessible restrooms near there. You see that we have very heavy use of the portalets that are there, as well as the trash receptacles in that area. And we have a number of different design options that we can talk about with council at a different time as we go forward as far as those go. We did put out an invitation to bid on December 6th, and we had about 11 companies in representation at a pre-bid meeting on the 20th. Several of those were subs. We had 4 that pre-qualified for the project, and on the 14th of January, we opened those bids. We received only one qualifying bid. That was from Gould Construction. Their bid was for the base project at $3,685,647, with the island area priced as a bid alternate for a little over $1 million, for a total bid of 4.6, just under 4.7 million. Additional project costs that we are currently going through with design with SGM for utilities and other infrastructure, as well as construction management, are approximately, we anticipate about $550,000 for a total project cost of 5.2 with Gould's bid proposal. Gary Lacey with REP, who is the designer of this project, has reviewed the bid and did provide comments. Some of his remarks were a feeling that the majority of the prices were in line with similar riverbank projects. He did offer a number of suggestions for cost reduction, including delaying or bringing plantings and vegetation in-house for savings of $334,000. Deletion of large decorative boulders, mostly around the island area, at $169,000, and then consideration of removing portions of that island area phase for about $426,000. For a total project savings of about $1 million were his recommendations, and he did recommend contracting with Gould. Some considerations from staff and explanation of some of the pricing we're seeing here is there's a number of concerns with the contractors about uncertainty with the quantities. Gould also qualified their bid with those comments. Because of that, we could probably expect significant change order requests, as well as the additional project infrastructure costs, which I pointed out.
We do have CPW's permission to extend the in-water work window through May of this year if we decide to pursue this project. We anticipate completion of the ramp in May and full use of the park in June with demobilization happening in early July. This project has been in the works for so long. A lot of the decision makers on some of the original features and amenities in this project are long gone, and we find we do get a lot of public input as we get new like Parks and Recreation Commission members or new city council members in on why did we add this feature or that feature. And we do feel it probably is beneficial to go through another round of public input and charrettes just to get some feedback on what we finally put in. If we do hold off and reject the bid and kind of go up back to shore up some of those quantities and measurements and costs, we'll definitely probably want to engage in that. With the 27th Street Bridge and Midland Avenue projects, Council has about $9 million in bond proceeds, bond revenue left that they can consider with this project. So options for Council are to really either reject the bid, we can go back and modify some of those features and design with public input. I know the alignment of the boat ramp with the roundabout island was one of the major considerations, as well as some aspects of the island portion, and better quantify those materials. We would like to see additional bid proposals and maybe a little better or competitive pricing. Another option is to approve the current bid either with or without the island bid alternative. Or a third option is to work with REP and Gould to value engineer the project and just simply cut some of the different features to reduce costs. That doesn't necessarily help the uncertainty in quantities question mark with the pricing, but would allow a lower cost to the overall project. And I've presented several times on this project as we have gone forward and worked towards bid set documents. It's an important project to the community. There's no one that I've talked to that has not been in full support and excited to have this done. We have a lack of river access in the community, a lack of connecting with the river, and as one of our most used parks where we hold a lot of events, and one of the main connections into downtown with pedestrian and biking and connecting with the confluence area that we're looking to do development on. This project brings a lot of value to our community, and we will defer to Council for direction on how they'd like to proceed. I am happy to take any questions as well as Terry.
Any questions for Brian?
Brian, I have one small question. It's kind of a side question at this point, because I came into this project fairly late in the game. This particular picture that's up here is showing little sand beaches and things, yet every time we have the CPW rep at our River Commission meeting or something, they always say no sand beaches along the rivers. Is that still in the plan, or?
They are currently in the plan. Those protected kind of areas that allow for access down there. How we do those and what kind of material we use, or alignment of those jetties, that might change based off CPW's recommendation. It's not a requirement, but a suggestion. And I think they do bring up some good concerns with certain types of parasites that proliferate in those kind of conditions. And obviously, we want to be sensitive to the wildlife. And a lot of this project is to not only seek better safety and health of the shoreline, for park users and river users, but also for wildlife and habitat restoration.
Right, for quality along the river. And
yeah, and
okay.
An RP is aware of those comments, and we'll probably look to make a few tweaks. Yeah.
Okay, great, thanks.
Any further questions for Brian? Thanks, Brian. Is there anyone from the public who would like to comment on this item? Seeing none, I'll close it to public comment and bring it back to council for discussion. Don't everyone speak at once.
Well, I have comments. I was kind of hoping I'd be third in line to the first in line. I am, I'm very invested in this restoration. We've talked about it for a number of years. I think when I was running on council, it was a big topic 4 years ago, and I know it's important to this community. It's important to have a riverfront at our largest main park that's not littered with rebar and concrete and leaching out old car bodies, and I think it's an embarrassment to this community. That being said, we kind of thought we'd have a project in here to fix all that for $2 to $3 million, and now we're staring at $5 million and wondering where that goes from there. So it is, when that first was brought to my attention as those bids came back, Deborah asked me if it would be reasonable to put it off a year and continue to work on that project, and I said that would, my knee-jerk reaction was that was absolutely unacceptable. I think there's a lot of people in this community that will take it as unacceptable. I sit on the River Commission here as well, and I know that they were upset a year ago when we put this project off. They wanted it done then, and the main reason we put it off a year ago was because we thought we'd reach out to the world and get some grants to help us pay for that. We did, and we did not get any grants. So now that project is, just because of the escalating prices of construction, that project now costs more than it would have a year ago, and next year it'll cost even more. However, I also sit on the park board, and this became quite the conversation at the last park board meeting because Andy Mueller and James Fosnot, to drop a couple of names.
What are their professions?
We have a couple of attorneys on that board. And they're water users, and they were not at all happy with the alignment of the new boat ramp and how it intersected the existing island. That's like a traffic island out in the cul-de-sac where you would turn trailers and back into that area. So they wanted more time to review that. And so I'd like to put it on them that's the reason why this is going to delay again. But I think there is a number of things that we should talk about, and I guess if I was a council of one up here, we would do this project this year. I would simply take Gould's bid, which is really, well defined down to a number of line items, and I'd start marking through and circling things that would differ between our needs and our wants, and we'd go ahead and build that misaligned boat ramp this year, and we probably would forget about the island, which is $1 million, and I'd forget about the amphitheater that's another $1 million in cost that's looks good on paper, but the reality is we already have a band shell out there, and even though it's not completely functional because of the grade around it, if you're in the back of the audience, you know, you can't even see the stage because it just doesn't pitch itself up. Early on, talking about this project with John Toffer, he was saying he didn't understand why there would be any export of materials, because he thought all the exports should actually just be added to that area. So I put before my fellow council people today, you've all got this plan. It's got to be folded up there.
Okay.
I gave one to Deborah as well, and gave one to Terry. Brian, sorry I missed you out there. This plan was drawn up by Toffer and Associates back in 2012, and it was to add contour up from the band shell or the stage that we have currently in place. So the only reason I bring this up today is I think I am willing to accept defeat at this point, because I know how the rest of this council probably stands on that after our work session this morning. But I think I'd like to encourage staff to kind of broaden the scope of the project, shrink the scope and broaden it. You know, I think we ought to agree to lose the bridge to nowhere. I think we ought to, although I thought that'd be a great thing if I had all the money in the world, but I don't. I think we ought to lose the amphitheater dug into the side of the riverbank, and I think we ought to look at exporting the materials that we do take out over to this current band shell and see if we can't save some money on the export and regrade this more to resemble this plan that was drawn up in 2012. I also know that we need more time to probably evaluate the bathroom facility that wasn't a part of this original plan and kind of got scabbed in there at the end. And we ought to further consider the irrigation in the park and the lighting scheme. And if we gave staff and another year to work on that, not even a year, but 7 months, yeah, and get this thing out to bid in August instead of pushing it right up to November again, then maybe we'd get and identify your quantities and some of those other issues that we have, then maybe we would get a better set of bids back, and maybe more than one bid back, honestly. I think that's about what I've got. There is a plan, and I would just say, and it doesn't really relate to this, I don't think, too much, but we're talking about the band shell, and there was a whole plan developed as well to renovate the band shell and make it more of an all-weather shell. At this point in time, all these storms that blow in every Thursday night or Wednesday night, they all come in directly into that, and it always shuts down the music because there just isn't much overhang. And we've stockpiled all the steel, structural steel, to affect those renovations and stretch that roof out. And I don't know if that should be considered in this at this juncture or not, but I would like to see that. Personally, I think that area, you know, between the island and the mainland, there be dredged out. Right now, it just collects stagnant water and no doubt incubates mosquitoes. And it was actually very little money that was shown up on the bid, and I say very little, and as the big picture here, it wasn't a lot of money to dredge that out. keep water flowing through there. There is the other issue that I would bring up of the old railroad abutment that's in the river, and there's been conversation about, you know, whether we should spend, I think it was $138,000, that's off the top of my head, or just over $100,000 to pull that out or leave it in place, and I think that deserves a further conversation and maybe some more public input. It killed a young kayaker a few years back, and certainly I think ought to be removed. But those are my general thoughts.
Thanks, Steve.
I'd appreciate hearing from the rest of this council.
Jim?
Yeah, I guess I just want to say to you, Steve, I agree with really everything you've said, including wanting to see this thing done as soon as possible, but also recognizing you had a lot of things there that you said we needed to look at some more, whether it was boat ramp alignment, whether it was, you know, this plan, just a number of things that I think it's worth our while to, you know, not try to rush in or re-engineer or value engineer or whatever, but to really look at these things. Not to drag it out, though. I think we ought to be, you know, ready to vote to move ahead on this thing, you know, in 6, 7, and 8 months, something like that. That should be plenty of time. So, and I guess I'd just tell you also, I appreciate you. I know this morning you were, you could barely stand to utter the words, but I think you I believe you've arrived at the right conclusion. Let's delay it just a little longer, take care of these things, get it right, and, you know, probably get ourselves, I think, a better bid, more bidders, a bid that's not sort of full of risk pricing, including that open-ended potential on the material. So, you know, I appreciate your flexibility, and I agree with your ultimate conclusion of let's delay it a little while. And so, I guess we'll let others comment before a motion's made, but that's a motion that I would support.
Thanks, Jim. Shelley?
Similarly, I agree with a lot of what you said, Steve. I think we've been talking about this a long time. It seems like we've had general agreement that if the bids came in high as they did, that we'll probably be eliminating the little bridge to the island and also the amphitheater, just because those are high cost features that don't necessarily speak directly to the goals of the project that we're working towards, which is to clean up and improve that shoreline and the whole experience at the park and the boat ramp. So I'm discouraged that we only got one bid, but I think that's just the nature of where we are right now and trying to rush this. You know, we put it out to bid late in the year, and the timeline was very short for construction to get in there and have it done by May or so. So I think it's feeling very rushed at this point, and I'm for putting it off, rejecting the bid at this point, putting it off, going back a little bit to the drawing board. Maybe we keep in those options for the bridge to the island, the option for the amphitheater, just whether or not we'll move forward with them. I hadn't seen this plan before that's up there now, and I kind of like that and would prefer improving this area over building that new amphitheater. I'm not so hip on the retaining wall. I'd rather see a berm similar to what we have on the kind of north side of that area right now, because that works well for people now for events, you know. And that would soften that versus a retaining wall. But those are the kind of details that can be worked out. But I think this project is just feeling like there are enough questions. We're not quite there yet. And yes, we could rush it through right now, but we also have question on how much it's going to cost. If we were to rush it through right now, we might end up with $1 million extra in materials. We don't really know that at this point, and I'm not willing to go forward with that uncertainty. So that's where I am. Thanks.
Thanks, Shelley. Jonathan?
I agree with everything Steve Davis said. about the scope of the project, contracting and expanding. I think that the band shell, I'm a huge lover of rafting of the river. I'm a huge lover of live music. I think we can bring some regional acts, some really known names to this park if we can upgrade that band shell, create a little bit of slope, maybe look at a sound booth. You know, I don't want to design it right here on the dais, but I'm excited for what it could be. We have a special events coordinator and fantastic Parks and Rec director who I know will make that happen. They're putting pressure on you, Brian. So, you know, I don't want to redesign the whole project because I love the tidal pools. I love being able to pull boats in there and kids be able to play. I love the idea of the whole thing. I think this should be our #1 priority going into 2020 to make this throughout 1990. I'm sorry, what year is this?
2019.
Thank you. That one. And normally I don't like the idea of spending money on beautification and needs type project versus basic functions of government, which are things like streets and police and fire. But this is a project for the citizens of Glenwood Springs. No one will be able to tar this project as you know, this is only for the tourists and we need to take care of this is taking care of our citizens. And if we don't do projects like this to make it a fantastic place, then what are we doing in this town?
Rick?
Yeah, just real quick on making the future more specific. I'm not necessarily wedded to the idea of the color of the rocks on the shoreline. I mean, I think, you know, people get used to different sorts of hues and rocks, and, you know, if that's going to be like an exorbitant sort of expense, I think we ought to really identify that and then, you know, show some alternates to, you know, the color of the rocks, the size of the rocks. Probably the size is more important than the color at that point. But, you know, I would have liked to have seen this done this year. I think it's a significant undertaking. If you look at what happened at Vogelar Park, Kiwanis Park, it's beautiful. And I think that that's within range. And you know, the last comment is I think that we expect an awful lot out of our engineering staff. I mean, it's, you know, I'm glad I'm not an engineer and I'm glad I don't work on that staff because it just seems like we got a 5-page report from the city manager, which was very well done. And, you know, I dare say there aren't many cities on the western slope that have 5 pages worth of projects and things going on. And so I think that we felt the crunch of this. I would have liked to seen it gone this year, but I think 2020 will be a new year, and we'll probably have the specificity that we really need to tie this together, and hopefully it doesn't scare away any potential contractors from wanting to do this. Because I think the more specific you are, the better quality of bids that you get back, and you eliminate a lot of the risk factors. So thank you for your attitude, Steve. I appreciate that. And everybody on council.
Well, it's hard for me to get to this point. I was the one that was going to be, you know, beating my fist on the table this morning, but maybe we should give it some more consideration. I think we had 2 goals in this project, 2 priorities. #1 was the boat ramp. The boat ramp we're using now is completely antiquated, and #2 is to clean up the riverbank, and I think we kind of fell away from some of those 2 priorities. We got those 2 priorities in it, but we also had now all these other embellishments as well, so we can't afford all those embellishments. So we'll regroup, and we'll consult with our attorneys Andy Mueller and James Fosna and see if we can get it designed to their satisfaction, and then go forward.
Do we need a motion, Deborah?
Make a motion, yeah.
Yes,
I'm ready
to reject the bids.
You want to make a motion?
Sure. I'll motion that the city reject the current bid and work with an engineering firm to better quantify the needed materials for the project, for the Two Rivers Park project. And I guess that's it for this year. The one comment I'd like to add for staff is, let's get on this earlier in the year and not have it be going out to bid in November, December. I'd like to see it, let's get these questions answered and let's be ready to go to bid in August or September, so we have time.
And could I just make a request that you would add the consideration of this John Toffer plan in that consideration?
In that, okay, so working with an engineering firm and local landscape architect to work out adding the improvements to the existing band shell and seating area in the
At
park.
least as an alternate.
As an alternate.
Could I ask one more potential friendly amendment, and that is we direct staff to make sure that the unpaved path that has been unpaved for 3 years gets paved as soon as the weather permits this year?
You just won't let it
Does that need to be part of the motion?
I think we can just move forward with that.
Is that, okay. I think they're planning on doing that anyway.
I just
so
wanted
it's not part of this project.
somehow codified that needs to happen. So we have a motion to reject the bid received for Two Rivers Park, to ask the consultants to refine and better define the bid quantities. There was a lot of discussion to possibly eliminate the amphitheater. Right now the design includes the amphitheater. If we don't include the amphitheater, it's going to be a redesign. Do we want, I'm commenting now, I apologize. Do we want the amphitheater, do we want the design refined in its current state other than the addition of the band shell and the seating area in front of the band shell?
There was also talk about the boat ramp I have to add in too.
Yeah, I would say if council directs that we go ahead and hold off on the current bid, we will probably immediately engage in some public charrettes to get some comment and maybe refine and like Steve said, maybe shrink down some of the scope of it and expand on other things that are important to council and the public right now. We can make those changes fairly quickly, I think, and still meet maybe a late summer bid invitation.
Okay, would you like that in the motion?
Sure. I was just going to say, I think we need a little time to regroup.
So
but
let's
we
just
will,
say...
we will get on it and have public charrettes. And I don't think you need to, in your motion, put everything you've said tonight, because I think we're going to be back soon.
You understand the direction?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, let me revise the motion just to say that City Council will reject the bid for the Two Rivers Park and work with an engineering firm, staff, and designers to better quantify the project.
How about revise
project,
and better quantify the project?
And quantify materials for the project. Is that neat?
I think I'll second it. I think we all know what we're doing here.
Right.
Okay. So a motion by Shelley and a second by Jim to reject the bid for Two Rivers Park improvements and instruct staff to work with the engineering and design consultants to revise and better define the project. Is that good enough? Okay. Jonathan?
Yeah, I think, you know, we're going to be reconsidering boulders along the river and potentially examining like a ready wall. We're going to be examining if the two lawyers are right about the boat ramp or not. We're going to be examining amphitheater or not, band shell, regrading. So it's significant, all the elements we're going to be reconsidering. However, the difference between boulders and ready wall, the difference between putting fill dirt and regrading, sodding an amphitheater and maybe some overhang, it's probably a little more complicated than that. But I guess I don't I don't know that we need full-on charrettes and a robust community input process, because I think we've had that. I think we're at the point of more of we need a redesign to tweak what we already know versus a complete reimagining and public engagement at this point. I don't know if I want to open the can of worms.
I agree.
Would agree too.
I think that's why we use the word revise.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right.
We will run it back by our boards and commissions.
A quick comment on John Toffer's design here. You know, we do a number of very large events that bring in thousands of people into that park around that band shell that extend beyond the fence line of the softball field. I'd be hesitant to do anything that elevates that with a berm or otherwise that would limit visibility of the band shell, but I understand the intent of what you're saying, to be able to have better visibility of the band shell. And I think there are design ways that we can do that without diminishing capacity past that softball fence. So yeah, that's something we can definitely look at.
Yeah, which I think is why there was a requirement for a wall to be built there, if I'm following what you're saying.
Well, I think what Brian is saying is that someone, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but if we put the wall there, then someone in the softball field is not going to be able to see the band shell at all.
Yeah.
And
Right.
So
yeah, if we have attendance that goes beyond just that immediate band shell area.
And Brian, other than the laser light show, what are some of those events just off the top of your head, or is it more future events and just preserving flexibility in the future?
Yeah, so 4th of July is one. Summer music does get beyond the fence line.
So it doesn't lead there.
And we have all kinds of large events that we're planning in the future. So we want to be able to maintain a full park capacity.
And I would just add one note of caution, because I'm an engineer and I like to put a damp cloth on almost everything, but some of the material that we were going to take out of the bank and that we were thinking about moving up here, you know, we were talking to the contractors, and I really still believe it's true that we'll find, you know, household waste, and we'll find cars and that kind of thing. So it's not like it's a clean fill move from the bank and put up here. So I think we have some more work to do to figure out exactly what that material is. Okay. Sorry.
all right.
All right.
We have a motion and a second. Let's go ahead and call the question.
Get out of your things.
Not seeing anything.
No.
Oh, there it is.
Nope.
I'm still not getting it.
Yep, there it is. You can abstain.
Huh?
You can abstain.
Oh, no.
No, did you get logged out? Just click on that, yeah. Oh, no, you did get logged out.
You logged yourself out.
Oh, my God.
And I don't have a voting thing.
Sorry.
And I don't think I did anything weird, like Steve. I told you to not watch that on there.
I'm guessing the voice mode would be okay. Voice mode.
Okay, all in favor? Or do we need to do it one by one, or?
No, I think it's just like.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to reject the current bid and revise and refine the design. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
I didn't.
Thank you, Council.
I abstained. Put that on record.
Well, you got your voting thing. I still didn't get a vote. So, I don't know.
Came up.
All right. So, next item is agenda item 16, which is the 27th Street Bridge and Roundabout Construction Management Contract Amendment.
Good evening, everyone. I first want to apologize. There was a mix-up with the staff report. I think Deborah handed out the correct one.
The system ate a couple of staff reports this time.
So you handed them out physically?
Yes, this should be up there. But I think Joe is here in person to explain it.
Correct. So I'll give you a brief summary. We've accepted a baseline schedule from the contractor, and with that, we've allowed them to extend a little bit of their work in order to reduce the impacts to the neighbors in regards to evening work and weekend work. We felt that that was something that we wanted to do for them because we are impacting them so much. This extended the contract days by 41 additional working days, and therefore the construction management had to be expanded. And I understand there's concern over the amount of construction management that's happening with this project, and unfortunately grants from the federal government don't come free, and it's involved with a lot of documentation, paperwork, and management. And the biggest difference between a normal city project and a project that has federal funding is that we can have a warranty on our city projects. We usually include a 2-year warranty, which kind of keeps contractors honest and keeps the product, because they don't want to come back and have to fix it 2 years later. Whereas with a federal project, there's no warranty allowed. So it's important for us to have a construction management on site anytime the contractor's out there in order to verify that the work that we're getting meets the specifications and the plans, and that we're not fixing things in the future. So any questions you have, Joe's here. He can answer any questions in regards to the contract.
Just out of curiosity, can you refresh our memory? What is the total amount of the federal grants we've received on this project?
We have $1.6 million in off-system bridge funding. We recently got another $500,000 from FHWA. And then we have a DOLA grant, but...
So the 1.6 includes the extra 500? Okay.
Correct. Well, yeah, so I guess it's more than it's 2.1 with the design funds that we originally had.
Okay.
So 1.6 for construction.
Okay. And that's it? So that's the DOLA grant?
That's just the FHWA grant. The DOLA grant doesn't have as many restrictions as the FHWA grant does. So.
Okay.
But how much was the DOLA grant?
$950,000.
$950,000?
Yep.
And we did we get a FMLD grant on this?
We have $500,000 from FMLD, and we got another $500,000 on Monday from the county. So.
From the county, okay.
And I think the utilities have also, that's not working for you, the utilities have also chipped in, I think, about $1 million.
Yeah, I revised
the utilities.
Water, sewer,
water, sewer, broadband, electric. Because they're running across.
I revised the spreadsheet after that meeting. I think without the additional CM, the bonding amount was a little under $7 million. Something like that.
6,700,000?
Yeah, something like that.
It was noisy over here, Jessica. How did we get to the extra 41 days?
So the original specifications for the contract required that the contractor only stay on the east side of the bridge until March 1st and then move to the west side. And that was because of the easements we negotiated. The contractor came back after being selected and said, you know, we're gonna have to work nights and weekends in order to make this schedule work. We can do this without impacting those easements or entering them early, and propose an alternate schedule that included work so they can alter, I guess the first phase of work begins with retaining walls, shoring walls, and they do ground nails to do that, and then there's some concrete that's faced, and there's cure time, so they can do one side, go to the next, come back to the other side, do the lower bench, move to the next, and that way they can keep moving and keep most of the work during the daytime in order to lessen the impacts to the neighbors.
And when was that change in the timing?
Middle of December was when it was proposed and accepted. We had a contract modification for that.
Go ahead. So the agenda item, the way that it's written, Jessica, if I go to just above the red pencil marks,
Sorry.
there, this is indicated to be a contact cost increase. But isn't it like an hourly rate to cover what could be an increase? I mean, if we approve this, we're not automatically spending $237,250.50 more.
Correct. It would be.
We're just providing sort of an avenue to spend up to that, should that be necessary.
Correct. So if the project were to get done early, being optimistic, then we would only be charged for what was actually completed.
So you're just increasing the not to exceed.
Right.
So, and the scope of the project from the time that we signed this contract for construction management has shifted at least a little bit. I mean, there's a few elements that are there now that weren't there when we first approved the construction management account.
Right.
Can you talk about that a little bit and how that might be a factor here?
So the way the construction management was approved was with a base number of hours per day being worked for the full span of the contract. That was an assumption that was made because we didn't have the contractor's schedule at that point. So with the contractor's schedule being submitted and accepted, we have to adjust our CM hours because our crew has to be out there with them anytime they're on site. They have to monitor traffic, they have to monitor working conditions, they have to do EO interviews, and they have to be on site. So this adjustment came with that, and there would be an adjustment regardless of the added working days, or I guess the added contract days or not, just because there would be night work and weekend work as well, which was not originally included.
So, and the timing of the project changed at least a little bit from that conversation until we started breaking ground January 2nd?
In the aspect that we are allowing them to access the west side of the bridge earlier, on the conditions that they don't get into that easement, and they are reducing those days on weekends and nights.
So what impact does this new and I guess somewhat desirable level of federal supervision play into the extra work that you're talking about here? I mean, is this like, I know it's a layer of complexity, but you know, is it sort of unanticipated sort of event, but there's cycling that through the construction management for the bridge. It seems like, does Joe and his group, do they perform some liaison work in order to make that happen, or so what's that relationship?
So the construction management team is in charge of monitoring the contractor, submitting all the paperwork to CDOT, and verifying that it meets the requirements of FHWA and CDOT. The best way to explain it is not only are they on site between 8 to 14 hours a day, or potentially more, they also have to do 2 to 6 or 8 hours of paperwork a day to verify all these things to CDOT. It all gets submitted to CDOT. All the pay apps get submitted to CDOT. They all get verified before we can do anything with them. So it does add a lot of paperwork.
So, and then the 15.7%, I don't know, is that the right sort of percentage? CDOT seems to think that that's in line with other similar work that they're overseeing.
Yeah.
And so the 15.7 might rise to 15.8 or 15.9, or, you know, if we were to approve this and if all the hours were used.
Right now it's 15.1. It's a not to exceed amount. I hope that we don't go over that. Hopefully it's less. CDOT said that their current bridge projects are with a mix of in-house and hired staff are averaging between 17 to the high 20s in CM. And it just depends on the complexity of the project. And when I talked to Pete Lombardi at CDOT, he thought that the percentage was fair for the technical aspect of this project.
Thank you. Shelley?
I don't have any questions, actually, Jessica, but I do appreciate your questions, Rick. My feeling is that with the complexity of the project and the kind of criticality of the project and the location that it is for the 27th Street Bridge and the concern over our citizens for traffic delays and things like that, that we need to make sure that we get this done right. So I'm ready to make a motion, but then I thought, do we need to do public comment first?
Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, I have a question for you, Jessica. Sorry. What incentives do we have in place in the construction contract for the contractor to finish on time and or early? In other words, is he incentivized to, are they incentivized to finish early?
So currently, the only incentive we have is for the bridge slide. It's for that window during the bridge slide. If they get that done earlier, there's a prorated amount of $43,000 a day. They do have critical dates they have to meet. The slide has to be done before school starts. And the pad bridge has to be in place before the slide. If they don't meet those dates, they can't complete their in-water work. So we discussed this with Dave McCall at CDOT and incentives and adding incentives, and all that really does from a cost standpoint is it increases the cost of the project because they're going to charge you more in case they don't meet those. And in order to meet the in-water date, I think really constricts the project as a whole, and they have to meet those dates. So,
well, did I hear you correctly that if they don't meet those dates, we're going to end up paying more? And there's not, on the other end, I mean, there's typically on projects of this magnitude, there's typically an incentive for a project or for a contractor to finish early. Similarly, there's a penalty for them to finish late. And do we not have, it sounds like we don't have incentives for them to finish early.
No.
Do we have penalties if they don't meet these timelines?
We do for the slide, but that's it. Can you? Yeah, there's liquidated damage in the specifications if they don't meet the November 30th date. And I guess if they're delayed, I'm not saying that if they're delayed that we're going to pay more. If we include that in the contract, they're just going to transfer that risk onto us. They're gonna increase their contract amount in order to cover that risk.
What date do you expect the slide to occur?
Late summer.
Late what?
Late summer.
Exactly.
Exactly.
But you said
we've run into some utility conflicts, and
you said before school starts.
Yes, that's a critical date.
That'd be huge.
I've been getting a lot of questions about the sign on Midland, that says the project runs till December.
Yes, I know. We've been going back and forth about that.
I guess I personally have to say I have, this is information I wasn't aware of, that there's really no penalty to the contractor for not finishing on time, and then his costs are going to go up, Joe's costs are going to go up, or HDRs I should say, because they're going to need to inspect more. So we're kind of writing a blank check here for some unknown amount, is what it's sounding like to me, which
I thought it was a not to exceed.
I don't think so. I think that, if it goes another 40 days, we're going to see another $250,000.
That was what I was just confirming with Joe, is that it's the standard conditions on the CDOT contract, which do include liquidated damages past the end date, whatever that completion date is, that there are provisions for.
Now, is that for HDR's work or for the contractor?
That's for the contractor's work.
So there is in fact a penalty
for the contractor. So there's two deadlines. One is the completion of the slide by no later than a date certain, and then the completion of the entire contract.
Okay.
And that's a tiered amount based on the total contract.
All right. Any other questions for Jessica or Joe before I open up for public comment? Thanks.
How many, I know we've gone over this so many times, but I'm getting questioned about it a lot now, where I wasn't a year ago. How many days is the window of that slide?
84 hours. It's
So
3.5 days.
so
It's
the bridge will be closed for 84 hours?
correct.
Over the, like from a Thursday to a Sunday.
Thursday to a Monday morning at 6 a.m.
And that sounds pretty aggressive.
Yes.
It's pretty exciting. What,
It's gonna be packed.
Jessica, communication came out from the city about a week ago about here's what to expect when this starts going, and I got a lot of questions, or comments anyway, because it said it could be alternating traffic one way. And it was nice because I don't think there was. I mean, I went over the bridge a lot and I didn't see it. So
Right.
if there was, it's for short periods, which is great.
It was.
But it did say from 7:30 to 5:30, and the comments I was getting is, could you make sure you don't do that during school hours? And so
Yeah.
as long as you know that, and maybe just communicate that, because I forward the stuff from the city to people when they have questions. I put it on my Facebook page. So any clarity, just so we can say, hey, from 8:30 on, or whatever, we'll just give them a little more peace of mind when making their morning commute plans.
And that was the general direction we gave the contractor. That notice was done by the PAM. And so we had some discussions internally on how we wanted to notice that in the future. But as a whole, the contractor is not working during that morning rush hour, or at least not obstructing traffic.
And as far as public communication goes, the contractor did hire Kathleen's group who worked on the Grand Avenue Bridge, and we are looking at how we could supplement that to help us as well.
Cool.
I mean, we know this is very sensitive. We know people have gotten very used to the level of outreach that occurred on the Grand Avenue Bridge, and we cannot promise that level of outreach, but we can promise outreach and more than what was planned.
And we do have a public information meeting on February 5th at the community center from 5:30 to 7. So if they have questions, they can definitely come to that as well.
Any further questions for Jessica? Is there anyone in the public who would like to comment on this item? All right, seeing none, I'll bring it back to council for discussion and or motion.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the contract changes on the 27th Street Bridge and roundabout construction contract amended as presented in our packet. Do I need to give the amount, or?
I think you can.
I can add it here, yeah. The requested contract cost increase is $237,250.50 for HDR's construction management costs, bringing that to a total of $1,487,246.60, or approximately 15.1% of the construction costs.
So maybe a friendly suggestion or maybe amendment, I think it's to spend up to that amount.
For contract not to exceed,
Yeah.
up to that amount.
Yeah, either way you say it, it's an hourly contract. So
Right,
that's
it's
the
a not to exceed amount.
Not to exceed,
Mhm.
okay.
There's a
Second
motion
that?
we have a motion by Shelley and a second by Rick. The motion is to approve the amendment contract for HDR Engineering with an contract cost increase not to exceed $237,250.50. Any further discussion?
Yeah, I'll just have, I know this is a really complicated project, which probably means it requires extra management. But and I'm not in the construction business or management, but I've got to say I've struggled with this one. When we looked at the original paperwork, it said something like 10,000 hours, if I remember right. And I thought, that's 5 full-time people. 2,000 hours a year is about how much people. That's five full-time people to manage it. Maybe that's right. I don't know. It just seemed exorbitant to me. And I've thought of this project as being a year long. I know the bridge is moving earlier than a year long, but the sign says in December, so that's a year long. Okay, well now there's another 41 days. It's a little over 10%, but we're doing a 15% cost increase for a little over 10% increase in the time. That's $100,000 right there. So I will vote against it, and maybe it's because I'm just too stupid and I don't get it, but that's why I am going to vote against it.
Thanks, Jim. Shelley?
Oh, I didn't think
okay,
that
sorry.
was for the motion.
Any other discussion? I share Jim's concerns. I think while this may be normal for CDOT projects, I think this is exactly an example of what's wrong with government in terms of this costing this much, both in terms of the construction of the bridge and the inspection of the bridge. I understand these are federal hoops we are required to jump through, but I think it should be acknowledged that instead of a $1.6 million construction grant, we effectively got I think this is, in my opinion, we're spending about double the amount that we should be spending on on typical inspection. So we got about $1 million grant. I guess that's the nature of these types of projects. I understand that this is necessary to see the project move forward. I'm glad we were able to clarify that there is in fact there are liquidated damages for the contractor not performing on time, so that we don't see this happen again. Because of the fact that we are pregnant with this project, and I don't think we have a real option to change direction. We are kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place, and as distasteful as I find it, I will support the motion just because I think we need to see the project move forward. But I'll get off my soapbox, I guess, now. Any further discussion? Let's call the question. And you don't have a screen.
I sure hope we have robust management on this.
You got it. Just came up.
It's hard, isn't it?
Yeah.
Cope, yes. Voorhees, yes. Gamba, yes. Davis, yes. Godis, no. Ingraham, no. Motion passes.
Too hard for me. Yeah, it was too hard for me too.
Mr. Mayor, I have a conflict of interest on the next item, so I will excuse myself.
All right, thank you.
Glad you did run.
All right. Next item is a 2018 sustainability program and draft budget from Clear.
You should have seen that coming. Just wait till we get to mid.
Good evening, Council and Mayor. Am I too close? My name is Maisa Metcalf. I'm Residential Program Manager at Clear, and I'm also a Glenwood resident. This is my first time attending a trustee meeting, so thank you for having me. It's my pleasure to be here tonight to, on behalf of Clear, to provide an update on the 2018 work done, and also to receive your approval for the proposed work in 2019. In your packet, we provided a detailed report, so I thought I would walk through the highlights and answer any of your questions as they come up. As you know, we've been implementing the sustainability rebate program for the city of Glenwood Electric Department since our first commercial pilot program in 2009. And this chart shows the economic benefits from this program. In 2018, the total invested in energy efficiency, residential efficiency, commercial, and solar was $956,000. Since 2014, so we did a cumulative results. Since 2014, there has been over $3,729,000 invested, and that money went to local suppliers and contractors doing this work. This right here just shows a little breakdown of the total expenses last year. 63% went to customer rebates, 29% to deliver this program, provide coaching services, and free commercial walkthroughs, do commercial outreach, as well as residential, and 8% to administer and provide reporting. This right here shows the growth of installed solar capacity since 2009. As you can see, in 2017, we did not provide any solar rebates, so there was a plateau, but in 2018, we had a very, very busy year for solar. There were over 132 kW systems added to the grid, 18 residential, 3 multifamily, and 1 commercial. And I think this year in 2019 is going to be even busier. To put in perspective, we already have 9 applications submitted for solar rebates. This chart just shows the different types of residential projects that folks applied for rebates. A lot of solar, but we also had 41 home energy assessments done in Glenwood Springs. We already had 3 rebates submitted in 2019, so I think it's also going to be a pretty busy year. I think people are getting more aware of climate change and what they can do to make a difference and trying to start in their own homes and businesses. This is not related to the city of Glenwood, but I just wanted to highlight a program that we have called CARE. It's for income qualified families, and the city supports that program through the sustainability program. This a story happened in Rifle, but I wanted to share a story that happened in Glenwood. We helped a retired school teacher, and she, when we went to her house and the energy auditor did the inspection, he went to the attic. First of all, he found that the house had no insulation at all. She had no wall insulation. The only thing she had was floor insulation. The house was extremely leaky. It was compared to living outside in a tent. And she gathered 80 pairs of blue jeans to use as attic insulation. So what we did was we blew in cellulose all over the attic, and she now has R49 insulation. We got over $8,000 in upgrades done at no cost, thanks to Energy Outreach Colorado, participating utilities, and the city. So she was extremely grateful. We did not have a slide on commercial program, but I just wanted to highlight some of the numbers. We completed 19 projects, did 8 commercial walkthroughs. Since Shelly is left clear, we hired P. Waller and Phil Meadowcroft, and they both have a lot of experience with buildings. They both worked for CMC, so they're going to be helping us with some of these commercial projects. We are currently working with the Hotel Colorado under the new ownership. They are extremely engaged and want to turn the hotel into a state-of-art sustainability hotel, so we're helping them on that effort. And in 2019, we're recommending a continuation of the program. We have adjusted some of the rebate and requirements. The one that will probably be most interested will be the fact that we're reducing the residential solar rebate from 75 cents to 50 cents a watt up to 3 kW. So that's a maximum of $1,500 for a residential rebate. The reason why we did that is because the solar price has really come down, and we want to be able to help more families this year than we were last year. Okay. I have copies of some of our marketing materials that we have the city logo on, and also the updated rebate sheet. So let me know if you have any questions about 2018 and 2019 as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I don't have any questions for Misa.
Oh, okay. Well,
All
thank
right.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for hanging out all night.
Oh my gosh, it was exciting.
Okay, as I mentioned earlier in the meeting, agenda item 18A and 18B have been continued to the February 7th.
I do need a motion on that.
Oh, so we need a motion to actually continue them? Okay. I would entertain a motion. Can we do it all in one, or do we need to?
You can do it all in one.
I would entertain a motion to continue.
Emma, I'm sorry. Do I have to recuse myself for even the motion? Like, leave the room?
You probably should. You don't need to leave the dais, just don't vote on it.
Okay. Just go.
Oh, we should wait for Shelley.
I'll get her.
Can I leave?
Okay.
You want?
Can you leave the dais?
Okay.
I need more shepherd's pie.
I do too.
We're going to suggest you guys take a break after this.
That'd be great.
All we have is parking. That's easy.
Thought we're going pretty strong here.
Yeah, but it'd be great to eat dinner again while we're doing that.
Just eating sugar right now.
All right. So I would entertain a motion to continue planning item 15-18 and ordinance number 1, series of 2019 to the regularly scheduled meeting on February 7th.
I so move.
Second.
We have a motion by Shelley and a second by Rick to continue planning item 15-18 and ordinance number 1, series of 2019 to the February 7th meeting. Voice vote, or do we need to call it? Do we need to call this as an individual vote or just a voice vote?
Voice vote is fine.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Except for Councilman Godus, who abstained.
We'll take a
or
45-minute break. And
okay then.
Eat dinner again.
I guess we'll take about a 5-minute break. If it's Tuesday, it must be Belgium, right? No, never mind.
Yeah.
Okay, planning item 28-18, consideration of amendments to the Municipal Code 070 to correct errors and omissions in the Glenwood Springs Development Code, which was adopted August 2nd, 2018.
All right. So I am here to discuss the corrections that we need to make, and just to be clear that none of the amendments being considered tonight are actually adding new code provisions. These are just correcting spelling errors. We've got some conflicting code provisions that need clarification, and there are some inadvertent but critical omissions. I've included a spreadsheet of those corrections in your packet, and at their meeting December 18th, the Planning and Zoning Commission considered these amendments and recommended that the council approve the amendments with one exception. We had suggested that we adopt separate review criteria for sign variance requests because the current code has 7 variance review criteria that apply to all variance requests, and we find that it's not really working well for deviations from the sign code. The commission decided to table that item, and they needed to consider that further. They wanted us to analyze, for example, what other communities are doing. So we have removed that from your spreadsheet. So I don't plan on going through each of the amendments. Just here to answer any questions that you might have. So we are recommending, staff is recommending that the council uphold the Planning and Zoning Commission's recommendation to make these code amendments, and we're requesting that you approve the first reading of ordinance number 3, and that's all I have. So like I said, that is not all I have. Just want to make it clear that this is the first of this is the first initial change. You will be seeing other changes because as we continue to implement the sign code, we will and we have found other corrections that need to be made. So that's it. That's all I have.
All right, thank you, Gretchen. Any further or any questions for Gretchen?
I had a question. Sure. On number 4 in your spreadsheet. Okay. Or 136, is it number 4?
Yes.
It has to do with the mixed use or non-residential uses on a property containing less than 5,000 square feet of lot area shall be exempt from this section.
Right. This one is just a clarifying language. I thought it was kind of oddly stated. So the correction is mixed use or non-residential uses on a lot that is 5,000 square feet or less.
Okay, so this is the only one that I saw that actually does change the intent, because we have quite a few lots in town that are 5,000 square feet, probably quite a few less that are less, you know, that are 4,999. So if the intent was to not include those standard like downtown lots that are 2 city lots, if it's ones that are smaller, I guess that was my question, because you're actually changing the meaning when you say 5,000 square feet or less.
Right.
Or do you want to just say
less than
5,000 square feet?
Correct.
So that was my question.
You are correct. It's a good catch.
So do we want to just say less than?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Which?
Number 4.
Number 4 on the spreadsheet.
Wow.
That was just one. So if we could maybe make that change. And
we
then
can,
the other one, I just had a question on 16, because I think this was discussed when we were doing the code review. You know, there was a discussion about allowing developers to submit
concurrent,
more conceptual plans, not as developed. You know, that they didn't include construction level plans.
Right.
This seems to be going the other way.
This is one of the instances where we did have several areas with conflicting language.
Okay.
And so this is correcting all that conflicting language, and so we are actually allowing people to have concurrent reviews of construction plans regardless of the size of the development. Okay. And again, this only applies to the site architectural plan reviews.
Okay.
Yeah.
So basically, if they have their project designed all the way through construction docs, then they can go ahead and submit it all.
Right.
And is that kind of how we used to do things?
Yes.
Okay, so this is just clarifying.
Right.
Okay. Let's see. And then on number 18.
Okay.
I had a question on the mailing notice, and I'm not sure when we went to first class mail, but I just know that when you're, we all get so much junk mail and everything else. And when that certified mail piece comes in, you pay attention to it because it's got the green sticky on it. And it's hard for people to say, I wasn't noticed because I didn't, I got that certified piece of mail. And I know it costs more, but I'm just wondering if it's appropriate to keep it certified.
The difficulty with certified is people don't pick them up. And then
you have to go pick it up?
You have to go pick it up. And so it creates, a lot of people won't pick it up. There are a lot of people, I know this isn't you, but a lot of people will not pick up a piece of certified.
Is that just if you have a P.O. box? Or?
Even if, because you have to physically talk to somebody to do it, and a lot of people just won't accept it. It creates an extra layer, and so the real question is, are you actually trying to get people notice or create a record? And certainly as an attorney, I like the certified because I said, here's when I mailed it out, and here's this, this, and this.
Right.
But I typically end up doing both, even in a jurisdiction that only asks for certified, because I know a lot of people won't pick up the certified mail. So from a cost standpoint, it's a bigger hassle, and certainly something that, you're going to know what's going on, more than likely.
If it's your neighborhood.
It's your neighborhood.
I just like that, you know when you get a certified letter, and that it's an important notice you should read versus now I'd say 75% of the mail I get gets ripped up immediately and thrown in the square recycle bin. So, okay.
So I will just add that this is intended for city-initiated rezoning applications. So when we do the rezonings that kind of widespread rezonings, like the one that we just did that was part of this application, we would have to do certified mail to potentially everyone in town, or half the town. So we were looking at it in that realm of we can still do certified mail, but this would have been a requirement that we would have to do it.
I guess I'm just wondering if we're going to let people notice with first class mail, can we give them a sticker or something that says official city notification, or just something that maybe alerts them that this is something worth reading, and don't just tear it up and throw it away because it's coming from you don't know who. And does it have a city return on it, or is it sent out by the developer?
So for other mailings, it would come from the developer. That this one is for a city-initiated rezoning,
right?
And so this one would come from us.
Okay. But do you understand my question? I'm just trying to make sure that it's a notice that people pay attention.
And we certainly do encourage folks to do the certified mailing because it does provide a record for them.
Right.
But it's just not a requirement of the code.
Okay. I think that's all I have for questions.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, thank you. Is there anyone in the public who would like to comment on the code text amendments and the proposed ordinance? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to council for discussion and or a motion. If someone were inclined to make a motion, they would want it to say something to the effect of, if I can find it here.
Approving a first reading of ordinance number 3, and then whatever title was included on that.
Don't we want council to uphold the Planning and Zoning Commission's recommendation and approve ordinance number 3?
Yeah.
I'll make that motion. I move that council uphold the Planning and Zoning Commission's recommendation and approve ordinance 3, series 2019.
All right, we have a motion by Jim, and did I hear a second? Rick?
Could I ask for that one amendment that we just revise item number 4 in the spreadsheet to say less than 5,000 square feet instead of 5,000 square feet or less than?
I think I heard that in Jim's motion.
Did you? Great.
No,
okay.
I'm willing to amend my motion to add that stipulation.
Okay.
And do you accept that with your second? Okay. So we have a motion and a second to uphold the Planning and Zoning Commission's recommendation and approve ordinance number 3, series of 2019, with the amendment to reflect less than 5,000 square feet versus 5,000 square feet or less. Any further discussion? Let's call the question.
Carp, yes. Voorhees, yes. Gamba, yes. Davis, yes. Goldish, yes. Ingraham, yes. Motion passes.
Thank you. Moving on, agenda item 20, parking. We have an agenda item on parking policies.
Terry Wilson is going to do this item, but essentially we brought back what we hope you wanted to see for approval with a small addition.
So hopefully you got the information, the revised residential pass parking stuff.
I did put it in the system.
Okay, thank you, because I was not going to be able to get that done. So I took a stab at what I thought I heard sounded like fairly much consensus opinions coming from up there, and took a run at it. Tried to make it as clear. I think it actually cleared up some of the language in the regulations that were in place. If you saw the comparative, we took 2 pages and made it a short one. And I think, you know, now it's time for you guys to look at it and see if we captured what it is that you're trying to accomplish with this step of it, and see if we need to make any additions, editing, or changes to move forward.
I think you missed the word individually.
Are you?
I'm not there, but from my study session, I was concerned about, you know, if you're going to come in and get a parking pass.
Right.
Like if I'm leasing an apartment, I can't come in and get 2 parking passes. It still says that you can get 2 parking passes, but it seemed like the word that, you know, that those people would have to come in individually to get that pass.
Okay, I thought that had been captured in it, but I may have.
It says residents will be required to apply for permits in person at the police department. Show proof of residency.
Maybe that's what, we can certainly add the word individually.
I could come in person and get 2 permits.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Well, that isn't what I meant.
I knew that's what you meant.
Okay, that's an easy cleanup.
Do I see a reference here somewhere where we got rid of the guest permits?
It doesn't say
they are just not mentioned.
Yeah.
They just they were edited out.
This replaces our prior policy into
right. The prior policy did address them. This one has a total lack of that mention.
So when does this go into effect then, Terry? I mean,
well,
if I
that's
got
up
a
to you
guest
guys.
pass,
that's way above my pay grade.
Okay.
I mean, I figured the first thing was to get something in front of you that you could look at, see if we've gotten close to what you want us to do, and if there's any significant changes, we can make them, send you back a final draft, and I think if you approve them, then it's just a matter of scheduling a start date for them.
You had made a request that we do it immediately.
Sooner than later.
Sooner than later, because you have so many of these that are coming up in the month of January, February that
And
roll annually.
we tore into that a little bit, and we found that quite a bit of it happened in actually December and January, so we're running a little behind on that now. It'll take most of the year unless we do some kind of a recall and get a hold of all our pass holders and say, you know, there's new regulations about this. We're not going to be honoring the guest passes and so forth. We can do that. We do try and keep a good database of contact information, phones, numbers, as well as obviously addresses and stuff. So we can go about it that way, or it can be through attrition as they come in for renewal, that the new process is put upon them at that time. Part of that just depends on, do you want a whole year without some of those changes really being in effect for folks? Such as, you know, we took out the parking pass permit exemption for the lot at 7th and Colorado. We took out the 700 block of Cooper. That was something I threw in there because I have heard a lot about that block. I've heard a lot of it from you and a whole lot from other folks. And so we thought that was probably something for our street maintenance guys that would be very useful as well. If those are things you're willing to wait for the entire year to actually take full effect, that's one thing. Otherwise, we'll need to get a hold of folks and start initiating the new process, issuing new permits, and getting rid of the guest passes.
But as we finalized the IGA with Garfield County, and it was really their statement that, you know, they didn't want residential passes on their property because it doesn't benefit them at all. So I assume that when we re-sign that lot and sign it to 4 hour, we can also sign it that it's that residential passes are not allowed in there.
We can certainly do that, but I think you would also want to get a hold of the folks that have been using that for a long time and notify them of that as well. Yeah. And you know, that could be a fair number of folks.
I'm glad it's you doing that, not me.
I thought you captured the consensus. I thought you captured the consensus. I thought it's well written, very clear. And I think, yeah, getting a hold of people, whatever it takes, of people that aren't caught off guard, you know, and they can comply with the new regulations, assuming we adopt them, makes sense. And so, so that leads me to a question, which is probably for you, Deborah, or Carl, or something. Is the ask of us to approve these as the city? Okay.
Right. And then also what Terry's looking for is a full implementation date.
And I certainly like
the years. You want to give them 90 days,
I like the tie-in of the date to the IGA for the parking lot. That kind of signals a significant change in our downtown parking, and that makes some sense. And I think at that point, if we brought folks in and said, you know, here's the new regs, and your pass is still good till, you know, the end of the year, but your guest passes are now null and void. Made sure and take care of that with the bed and breakfast up the hall, so up the street, so he doesn't come in and take a swing at me, and get all that clarified and stuff. And I think we should probably handle it that way and start kind of pushing the new regulations. And my thought would be that IGA date is a good one to kind of bite the bullet and do it.
Where are we on that IGA?
I have kind of a working draft. I want to try to get it over to the county before I bring it in front of you guys. My target on my to-do list is to have it in front of you on the 7th.
Yeah, and then so for the B&B that's up here, though, you're going to go ahead and issue them guest passes because that's their commercial.
We'll probably change the wording on it or something. We'll change the format, the color and stuff, so that it's very specific for them and that it stands out very well for parking enforcement purposes, and just work with them to, like I said, make sure we're not, you know, cutting their throat on their business in that area. But
so then would you suggest that you recall guest passes at the point that you just call people up and go, hey, by the way?
I think so. I think we just go through a process of telling them that, you know, notifying them. I don't know whether to use first-class mail or certified mail, but I just heard that. But, you know, make contact with folks and let them know that the regulations have changed. Get them a copy of the new regulations and tell them, you know, bring it in or shred it. It's
you
not going to be
blame
honored.
that on John Martin?
Oh, absolutely. Anytime I get a chance.
I had a question on the it not being valid and the 700 block of Cooper and that's city county parking lot. And I understand we've had some complaints there and we've had some cars that have been just sitting, which theoretically that 72-hour limit should take care of that. I'm just wondering, where are people who live then in those apartments up along Grand Avenue on either side of the Wing Street? Where are they supposed to park? And where
And
are
I'm
they gonna,
sure we will discover the answer to that together.
Are they just going to move out into the other 2-hour parking areas and create another problem? And
I think that that's definitely part of the challenge that we face with this, is that those cars are going to go somewhere. I think ideally we hope that they'll go down to the city, the old MOC lot, if you will, the 24-hour lot.
Right. And are we going to suggest that? I just feel like this is a targeted kind of, I feel like we're picking on the residential people downtown without giving them a good option, just because certain folks are complaining about parking in very specific areas, and I'm not comfortable with this solution.
I can't disagree.
I know you're
that
following the direction you got, Terry. But
absolutely,
and
I can't disagree. It looks like that. It feels like that. And it probably, to a degree, definitely walks like a duck.
I'd rather do
and it
comprehensive
did when we
parking.
came up with the system that we currently have. There was kind of the opposite with it, so that other folks felt like it was not fair on their side of the equation. I don't know how you solve that. This would be about the fourth iteration of significant change of parking downtown that I've been through, and I don't remember getting a parade thrown for any of those changes.
And I agree with getting rid of the guest passes and some of that, but so I'm not going to support this just because of those changes, of excluding them specifically from, say, that public parking lot behind on the east side of Grand, or the west side of Grand.
All right. Any other comments?
Quick comment, Terry. So it's one person, one permit, right? I mean, I can't come in twice and get two permits because you would have a database that would prevent me from doing that. That's good. So if it's June, is it still going to be $50? Is it September? Is it still going to be $50?
Well, my thought on that would be and this would be thank you for mentioning that. My thought would be, if we're going to initiate the new regulations, instead of waiting for everything to kind of go off the schedule on attrition, which I would prefer to kind of get it all in place, especially before summer hits. If we're going to do that, I would say waive the fee until their next renewal. Just leave, if they've got 8 months left on their parking pass, I wouldn't want to renew them for a year and charge them the $50. And maybe we kind of soften the blow and some of the concerns by saying, we're going to honor your 8 months, your pass is still good. Next year when you renew, there'll be a fee.
So if I show up as a newbie and I've never been here before, and I walk in September...
I'm hammering you. You're paying.
You're in trouble, huh?
Yeah, if it's a brand new one, I think we treat a brand new application under the brand new regulations as a brand new, pass, and that the fee applies. But I think we kind of grandfather in the existing ones and let them kind of have their lifespan that they had under the free program, if you will.
So I can't remember if we tackled the issue of weekend parking, and I noticed you cleverly left that out of this, but I'm not sure where we're at. Well, we had some weak words about, we need to extend some of the enforcement that we do through the weekend, and then the question was, would it be revenue neutral or revenue generating? And yes,
we need more time to look at that. I think that's part of the bigger conversation. I think we took what we thought a majority of you thought we could do quickly. That being said, I don't think people are going to be happy about this. We're not trying to sell it that way, but we do need to start making changes to downtown parking without a doubt. And I'll be looking for somewhere to office where people can't find me.
I have, if I could comment.
Yep, go ahead.
I have confidence, Terry, in however you want to roll this out, whatever you see as fit there. And I'd like to say that I appreciate Shelley's concerns, and I share those as well with kind of these downtown residents. I think a lot of the issue that we've had in downtown residential parking in these vehicles that just don't move, it's because they live downtown, they work downtown, and they don't drive their vehicles, you know, so it's not really much of an issue. I know that in the building next to me, above the old Florindo's, there's like a half a dozen people that live up there, and they don't have, there's one car between all of them, and they all live downtown, work downtown. They work at Smoke, and they work at the other coffee shop next door there. And I think that's the majority of what I see anyway, is people just kind of walking around, and they just abandon their vehicles wherever they happen to be.
Nothing shows us the need for dealing with abandoned vehicles like a good snowy winter.
Yeah.
And our code enforcement folks have been buried. They've been dealing with one guy that has 2 different cars. He has the same license plates on both of them. They're both expired for a year. They're both abandoned. Neither one runs, and they're in 2 totally separate parts of town, and they're not even close to where he lives now. So it's amazing the things you find out when you really go out and you start digging under the snow and running plates and checking on things that obviously haven't moved since the first snowfall. So.
Well, and as you put this, start enforcing parking like on that lot, the city-county lot there, it's going to, you know, create some discipline even in people like me that have a tendency to.
We're not aiming that high. We don't aim that high.
I think you should.
But I think, you know, if you guys are comfortable with it and with the rollout plan, yeah, it's, as Deborah said, it's not exactly going to be smiling faces and happy times, but I think if it's a change that we want to make, let's get started on it, because summer only gets more difficult with those issues as well.
And for some consideration for Cooper is a bit of a mess, and we need to have a fully functioning loading unloading zone before the 7th Street project starts, or before the summer kicks in, because we're gonna need it.
I can't say I parked in the middle lane this afternoon and it worked great.
Good.
It does work well, especially as long as those spots are turning over, and as long as there's some time where it's not parked full and our snowplows can get through there. And that has been a routine problem for them, and part of that has been a couple of residential parkers that have plunked down in the middle and spent Christmas break there and things, and then it's really tough to deal with when you don't have the availability of clearing that out and making it work the way it should.
Yeah, and that 72-hour thing will help with that too, but now they won't be there theoretically. Yes.
So this is a draft. I don't guess you need a motion on a draft.
Well,
you want a motion?
What you guys want to do, it's a draft because you guys haven't approved it.
Yeah.
Well, but do we need to approve of our resolution?
For a policy, or is it?
Yeah, I mean, probably either way.
Well, I'll make a motion that we approve the draft as drafted by Terry Wilson and his staff for the amendment to the parking regulations.
We'll bring that back more formally in a resolution to you on the 7th, hopefully along with the IGA, so we'll all kind of sync up.
That'd be great.
Okay.
We'll look forward to that.
We have a motion to approve the draft parking regulations by Steve and a second by Rick. Any further, wait, I haven't opened it up to public comment. Anyone from the, we have a motion before we have, anyone from the public want to comment on this? We're going to shut you down for parking downtown, so speak now or forever hold your peace.
Oh, Mr. Public's going to speak.
Oh, no. And we even let you eat our food.
I appreciate that. Christian Henney, 526 Pine Street. I think this is a tricky one, but I think it's a necessary one, that we have serious parking issues to address all downtown. And if we don't start getting our arms around pieces of it, it's never going to get addressed and it's never going to get solved. So yes, there may be some ducking and hiding from people coming in to visit you, but ultimately it's a part of this town maturing and becoming the real community that it is, and addressing the challenges that are in front of us. So I encourage you to move forward on this, and thank you for your time.
Thanks, Christian.
Thanks, Christian.
Any further public comment? All right, seeing none, bring it back to council. We already have a motion on the floor in a second. We did that a little bit out of order, but that's okay. Let's go ahead and call the question. Now you're in Google.
Yes.
Yeah, go over there.
Now I'm gonna have to sign. Oh, there I am.
I'll vote for you if you want. All right.
No. Excuse me. Voorhees, yes. Gamba, yes. Davis, yes. Godes, yes. Ingraham, yes. Motion passes.
All right. City manager report.
I'm good. Thank you all very much.
City attorney report.
The only thing is to, I guess, kind of come up to speed publicly on, as you know, the last December 6th meeting, the city took action to form a URA that would apply to Glenwood Springs Mall, the old mall. One of the tenants in the mall, Ross, did file suit challenging that decision. So we'll be working on that over the next couple of weeks. I guess what I would ask is that since it is now a litigation matter, that you kind of refrain from commenting on it. It's usually within the city policy, and let the process play itself out. And that's all I have. Thanks.
Thanks, Carl.
Thanks, Carl.
I have one. I'm going to throw it under correspondence. One of the items I've been asked to sign here, and this is maybe a question for whomever, is the agreement for professional services with the chamber. Normally, I'm saying things that I know we've approved this, but what authority do I have to sign this ongoing agreement, I guess?
I thought you guys took action on it.
Or the last meeting, it was the last meeting, January.
Oh, January 3rd. Sorry, so January 3rd.
Lisa came and presented her budget.
Okay, I'm taking your word for it.
Yeah.
So.
So we don't have reports on boards and commissions?
It's not on the agenda tonight. What is this?
That's left over from Clear, I think.
Once a month, not twice a month.
Yeah, usually it's like right after those meetings, and there's been so many of them lately. I was just wanted to talk about Andy Mueller again.
I guess I'll share with fellow councilors here. Deborah and I have had some discussions. I've asked Deborah if we can find a time to do some kind of meet and greet, photo op, keys to the city to the foreign exchange students that are in Glenwood Springs this year. They're two, one is a young man from Germany and the other is a young woman from Turkey. And I think it would be kind of exciting for them, exciting for their friends and family back home to see some photos sitting in the mayor's chair and that sort of stuff. So I don't know exactly when we're going to do that, but hopefully you guys will be all right with that. I think it should be fun.
We have found the tacky key to the cities that are also your borrowers.
Okay. The other thing I'll share with you all up here is I received my 23andMe DNA report today.
We don't want to know, Jim.
And if some of my votes have seemed odd and don't make sense, I've found out that I have a much higher percentage of Neanderthal DNA than the majority of the population.
That explains it.
There you go.
And the forehead.
That explains a lot.
That's all.
On that note, before we get to that further,
I got one more thing. I just want to say, in case anybody's watching out there, I know nobody in here really cares probably, but we are from the DDA continuing to look for an executive director. And we kind of failed in our first attempt, and in that process, and Deborah and Beth are helping us kind of dress up our advertisement, and we're going to be putting that back out again on kind of a national search. So if there's any nationals out there that would be interested, please give us a call. It's an important position. There's a lot going on.
All right.
We're having a really, really hard time filling the shoes of Leslie Bethel.
Yes. I don't think we'll actually do that, but if we can find another person to help steer the DDA, that would be
tremendous.
Best we could ask, I think. Any further council comments? We're adjourned.